Hello, Internet. Gino, the Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. Today is the Jade Empire episode, and that was a pregnant pause. I am also joined, as always, by Billy the Halloween Ghost Rothert, currently in the No Girls Allowed zone. How's it going over there?
I'm single and ready to pringle over here in the No Girls Allowed zone. The story behind what's going on here is that I'm in my parents' house in my old room, and because it's so empty, because there's only a bed and nothing on the walls, there's terrible echoes in the room. But to solve that, I've now made essentially a blanket fort that will muffle the echoey sound. So it's like I'm a kid again with my laptop under my blankets after my mom's told me to go to bed.
Mom, I'm totally asleep.
Boy.
We are joined on this nightmare train also by Peter the adult Busby.
Yeah, I feel pretty adult in my bright pink Walmart crew neck sweatshirt. It was affordable, it was practical, and I just finished cleaning my apartment. Doing a lot of adulting today.
Man, well done.
Look at
I know,
that.
I'm doing good.
And we are also joined by a special guest host for this episode, because this is the Jade Empire episode, and he's the person who wrought this upon us. We are joined by Chris ZombiePie Redacted, the harbinger of, right click, middle click, left click, left click. They're dead?
Yep. Yeah, I guess that's a good summary of Jade Empire, if there's ever been one.
I think the summary is actually this.
Is that just the sound of him making
click?
That's what Jade Empire sounds like.
Mm.
And also what doves sound like when they cry.
Okay.
So,
Do doves cry? Do birds have tear glands? I guess they must.
They excrete salt because they cannot. I don't think they can process salts in the same way we do. So that seabirds excrete salts from their face.
Gotcha.
They have a gullet.
All
They also
these
have a gullet.
moments.
So as you can tell from this conversation, we're talking about Jade Empire today.
Like tears.
And I'm going to be falling back a little bit so that ZP can lead, because you are the person who asked us to do this, because you joined us for the Final Fantasy IX Odyssey, and we felt it was only fair after Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 that you get to pick something.
I get to finally pick a game for you guys.
Well,
yeah, and as I introduced it last time, I consider Jade Empire to be probably one of my top most disappointing games, probably my number 2 most disappointing game of all time. And I wanted to share this with mostly mature adults that could appreciate the train wreck that I find this game. And I would finally have the avenue of expressing why I think this game is a bit of a train wreck. Now, I make no qualms about it. I don't like Jade Empire, so I think this might be the first time that someone deliberately picked a bad game other than your Sonic Brotherhood podcast.
To be fair,
we did play
Sonic,
Charles Barkley
Sonic
Shut Up and Jam Guide in.
Yeah. No, Charles Barkley Shut Up and Jam is actually fun.
How about Silent Hill 4 The Room?
So all of those
that has
games,
nice ideas.
They tried so hard.
There's an effort of sorts.
All of those games have explanations. Silent Hill 4 The Room, I wanted to know about that crazy conceit. Sonic Chronicles The Dark Brotherhood, I just needed to know how that was allowed to happen. And was it any good? It was made by BioWare, a company you can trust. Oh, wait.
Yes.
we
played another one of BioWare's lower moments. Oddly enough, I think you guys have played BioWare's most abjectly terrible game, but to BioWare's defense, Sonic the Brotherhood was created by a B team that was created to introduce BioWare into mobile and as well as iOS and handheld gaming. So most of the people who worked on Sonic the Brotherhood had very little experience creating a portable game or handheld game. And so what did they do? They decided to basically ape Chrono Trigger, and they did it in the worst way possible. With Jade Empire, I think there are fewer excuses to why this game does not work, or at least in my personal opinion, this game doesn't work, because not only did they have the main team, which is based in Edmonton, but both of the doctors were the creative directors for Jade Empire. For those that don't know, because they've since left BioWare, the doctors were the two major co-founders of BioWare and basically were the figureheads of BioWare from their creation all the way up to the release of Mass Effect 3. And not only that, but I did some digging around in terms of how deep BioWare was into Jade Empire. Jade Empire was the game where they decided to justify the increase of their studio from previously about 50 to 55 developers and programmers to about 70. So this was a full team, and it was a full team commitment, whereas, Sonic the Brotherhood was this side project to slowly introduce...
You keep talking about Sonic the Brotherhood. It's Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
You say the full name, like a tribe called Quest.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay. Named Slickback.
Oh, boy. So this game...
Where do we start? ZP? Take me on a journey.
We have a big journey. We're going to start with talking about the four major, what I think are the four big problems that face Jade Empire before we basically delve into the minutia of its story, because I think that there is parts to this story that I want to talk about.
So who's going to give the general overview of what the game story gives us?
Oof.
That's usually my job, but you're running the show, ZP.
Yeah, you can sick him on the story if you want, or you can do it.
I don't even know. I guess I can do the story.
Okay.
So the big four problems with Jade Empire is, one, it's a technical nightmare in the best case scenario. Oddly enough, the best version in terms of avoiding glitches and technical issues was the Xbox version. Surprise, surprise, the console version has fewer bugs than the PC version. I don't like the combat system. I think we're going to have that conversation at some point. I find Jade Empire to be incredibly culturally insensitive and occasionally even racist at times. And then the fourth and final one is this is just the most naked attempt for BioWare to graft on their formula or their thematic to a setting that I've ever seen. And it was the first time where I was like, oh yeah, BioWare has a template and they use the same exact template for every single game they ever make. So I guess the first kind of roundtable that I want to have is the technical issues. Basically, anyone who plays this game either has to modify this game, has to address a technical issue.
Summarize the game real quick for our listeners, or do you want to just go straight into the tech issues? Because the tech issues are a problem. They're real bad.
But the listeners don't really know what this game even is right now.
That's true.
And after Billy summarizes it, they probably
go ahead, Billy.
This is just my...
Give your 30-second pitch.
This is the only reason why they let me stay on the podcast, is because I can do these quick 30-second sum-ups of the story. And yeah. And I'm actually just like the sweat horse behind the scenes that...
Got it.
God.
Okay. 30-second pitch.
So, you're a weird orphan kid, and you were dropped off at a village to be trained by a martial arts master. You don't know who your parents are or what your destiny is, but when you get old enough, you receive special training from this master guy because somehow your destiny is tied to the fate of the world. You're not quite sure what's going on yet, but you get bits and pieces of an ancient race of people that were protecting the water god spirit thing.
Water dragon.
The water dragon. This deity is in charge of the wheel of life and governs all reincarnation. Long story made really, really short. You're the last person of this tribe and the last hope of the water dragon essentially being saved or reborn or reinstated so that reincarnation can continue. The major impetus of all the bad guys and bad shit that's happening is that the water dragon has been slayed or killed in order to stop a great drought that was plaguing the Empire. But as a result, people that die don't stay dead. Their ghosts hang around being all spoopy and shit, and they're starting to make environment stuff bad, like a forest and other bad shit happen. And it's your job to save the world and the Empire by letting all the dead spirits find their eternal rest.
Also Kung Fu.
Very much Kung Fu.
Did I get it? Did I miss any major points?
No, well, I mean, there are twists and turns, but yeah.
Yeah. A catastrophically terrible plot twist, but
that's like what you get,
like
first hour or so in the game. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You're the chosen. It's a BioWare game. You're the last of your kind.
Plots.
You're the last of your kind.
Whatever it is,
you're the chosen one.
You can choose between good and bad. You can save orphans or kill them. It's one or the other. Find them a happy home or murder them. And then you get points relative to that. You have a bunch of side characters who will join your posse, and some of them you can bone, some of them just talk to you.
Some of them you can bone at the same time.
That's true, but only if you're a guy.
Yep.
And
there's no relationship options if you picked a female character?
No, there are relationship options. There's no
Okay.
threesome option.
There are 3 ways.
Okay.
But yeah, there's... So ZP, now that everyone is caught up to this amazing story.
Okay.
Technical problems.
So, the big 4. Technical issues is number 1. First off, this was one of those weird games where if you played this on Windows Vista, this game was incompatible because the executable did not detect anything outside of the Windows NT family. So as a result, the Steam port is basically the closest version to that broken-ass version of Jade Empire that was originally released and was completely unusable. So the Steam version, for those that are interested and you somehow develop this keen interest, this moribund interest in playing this game, don't play the Steam version. Oddly enough, play either the Origin or the GOG.com version of this game. Everyone has a glitch or a catastrophic technical issue that blocks their progress at some point. I've never had a discussion related to Jade Empire where that doesn't happen at least once. So I was figuring, why don't you all just share one story in which a technical issue just basically blocked your progress almost completely?
Okay,
So-
I guess I'll go first.
Yeah. Gino.
Well, there was the initial problem where just the game wouldn't boot. That was bad.
Mhm.
Figured that out. Then there were numerous times where the camera would just kind of hover above my character and become an isometric camera, and then I couldn't see my character at all, and then I had to quit and reload. But those were not the times that really bothered me. The thing that was really bad was when I was fighting in I was fighting demons for some reason, and there were NPCs helping me. And that meant that all of them were kind of fighting the same demon as me, and I got it cornered, and I was beaten up on it. And when I inflicted the final hit, my teammate and the NPCs that were helping me froze wherever they were standing and refused to move, which trapped me in the corner. And every time I talked to them, I could just talk to them. That's all I could do. I couldn't move around them. I couldn't roll past them, and they didn't animate in any way, so I had to hard boot that entire level. Just restart the whole level because I was trapped in a corner by 2 NPCs. Fun fact, in the Final Fantasy games we played, they figured that shit out. In those PS1 games, if you run into an NPC for long enough, you phase through them. They figured out the collision problem. In Final Fantasy V, which I'm playing right now, when an NPC is in your way, its animation speed actually speeds up if you're running into it, so that it will get the fuck out of your way. Jade Empire? Nope. You live here now. You live in this corner. Welcome to your new
All right. So, Billy, what are some of the technical issues or glitches you encountered?
So I had the same problem of the game not being able to boot, which I also found a workaround for. I only had issues. The only issue that I ever ran into, and maybe I'm an exception case, was the rare, it only happened twice during my whole playthrough, of I'd go to a new screen where it'd have to load, and I'd just be looking at the ground, like at my feet.
Yeah.
That's
But
not
if you
rare.
just-
It happened to be about 7 times.
That's actually a very common glitch.
Well, I would just back out of the room and reload the level. Like, I wouldn't have to reload my save. I would just use the mini-map and find my way back to where I was supposed to go. Like, exit through the same load screen, and it would be fine. So,
Okay.
I can't
First
say
time.
it actually halted my progress ever, but it was like a minor inconvenience. So maybe maybe I got lucky.
Yeah, the first time that happened to me, the door that I was supposed to go through was sealed behind me, so I could not leave. I had to save and reload.
Okay, Pete. So, show us on the doll where the game broke for you.
So, I mean, obviously, I've shared some of these ones. Personally, one of my favorites was during cutscenes. sometimes the game would zoom in uncomfortably close on a single person's face.
Yes.
And the first time it happened, I'm like, all right, maybe this is just sort of like a Sergio Leone thing, like a spaghetti western sort of vibe. But then, like, other times it would get super close, and I would just have the mouth. And I was like, all right, I think this is when it sort of dawned on me that maybe this isn't something the game wanted to do.
That sort of happened to me too, but I had my character and Dawnstar like making out for an entire conversation arc. Except it was more like their faces occupied the same space, and there was no collision models at all. It was just their foreheads were kind of like doing some business together.
Yeah, I had that. Well, actually, I didn't have that one. I had the zoom in. I had dialogue just cutting out for no reason. Yeah. I had a character whose eyes, like, I don't think their eyelids loaded, and so their eyes just looked real fucked up for a while. Yeah, the dialogue system, fine, but the camera, not so great.
I did. One thing about the dialogue system I liked is you could recognize when one response was meant to suit up with two different of your choices.
Yes.
You're like, oh, so it didn't matter what I picked at all. Okay, good to know.
Yeah. So one of the big reasons why there are so many technical issues in Jade Empire is that this was the first game. Well, one, this is BioWare's first completely original IP and in a role-playing game. But it was also a brand new engine, which ties into why I dislike the combat in this game. This is the first real BioWare game that was prioritized to be a console game first and a PC game second. That has some major consequences in terms of the utilization of assets in this game. But prior to this, BioWare was this very esteemed and highly venerated PC computer role-playing game developer. And something that a lot of people don't remember about BioWare is that there were kind of two distinct divisions in BioWare, the game-making division and then the game engine-making division. Almost all of their game engines used to use renditions of the Dungeons & Dragons rule set. One of their engines, the Infinity Engine, was just basically a combat system that was a reutilization of Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition. And they would license that to anyone who wanted to make a game set in the Dungeons & Dragons setting or anything that was like a traditional computer role-playing game. By the time we get to the Aurora engine and they start to do 3D environments, they started to dial back because they wanted to make it more or less a real-time strategy game or a real-time combat game. When we get to the Odyssey engine, which was first used in Knights of the Old Republic or KOTOR, they still had the combat system basically use the D20 engine, which is every attack that you make is a roll of the die. And the enemy attack is going to be the roll of the die, and you modify those die rolls to either increase or decrease your probability of having a critical strike. The problem is that with Jade Empire, they removed the D20 engine and replaced it with a new parameter set that was based off of frames of animation. So the combat system prioritizes speed and frames of animation. And this kind of ties into one of my second biggest problems with this game. Is by kind of getting rid of the D20 engine and its roots in the Dungeons & Dragons format or the rule set. This was BioWare's first real attempt to bridge the gap between action combat and its legacy combat system. And that's where this starts to encounter one of its biggest problems. Prioritizing frames of animation in terms of how to do the in-game combat has some real dire consequences in execution in Jade Empire. First off, having one of the upgradable paths for any of these martial skills be speeding up the frames of animation is kind of messed up when you think about it.
Yeah. If you were designing a God of War game or something that is a strict action adventure or action role-playing game, and you decided that you were just going to you weren't going to figure out what the optimal speed of this game was. You were going to make it an upgradable thing. So it starts out where you are too slow and sluggish, and you need to upgrade it to the point where your character starts feeling like you're really in control of them. And that's basically what happens with Jade Empire. I immediately, anytime I leveled up a character or a martial style or any kind of style, I went for speed first because for some reason I don't know if the enemy characters start with basically no upgrades or full upgrades, but until I upgraded my combat speed, I was just constantly getting interrupted. Which is super annoying. Super bad.
And the other big problem with BioWare's combat system in Jade Empire is that this combat system is broken. You can stun lock, I would say, other than the ghosts and some of the monsters, all human beings and all human characters, you can stun lock in perpetuity, including the final boss. And there are certain abilities that are just simply overpowered.
I actually got to a phase where I went through an entire part of the story arc and never took damage.
Exactly. The most notorious of these attacks or abilities is Storm Dragon, where if you use the Area of Effect spell or version of the Area Effect of Storm Dragon, you can essentially stun lock everyone in the building. Yeah, you guys found out about Storm Dragon. I am so glad you guys found out about Storm Dragon.
Pete, did you not find out about Storm Dragon?
I didn't use it, I don't think. I might have had it at some point.
Did you stun lock everyone the whole game?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time I could just hit them fast enough that it didn't quite matter all that much.
And that highlights another problem with this combat system is you only really need to level up your first couple of skills, and you're pretty much done for the rest of the game. Yeah. Those martial styles will basically carry you through the entire game, and there's no real reward for experimenting or spending any time with any of the other martial styles. And one of the reasons for that, not only is this game short, there are a crap ton of martial styles, combat styles, weapon styles, and some of them are introduced way late in the game, so you have no reason to put any points or skills into those styles.
Yeah, I don't understand how this game, it feels like 30 different styles or 20 some odd different styles. And each of those styles has a 3-hit combo, a 3-hit basic attack combo, a charge attack, and then a area of effect attack. Mm-hmm. For the most part, the area of effect attack is a get the fuck off me move. Either it knocks enemies back or it stuns, inflicts some sort of status on all of them. The quick attack is how you do most of your damage, and the charge attack you use to break blocks. But that applies to every single style in the entire game, with the exception of maybe Chi Thief, which is an ability you use to restore your Chi meter for when you need to heal yourself.
Which is also one of the broken abilities, because you can basically stun lock almost every character using the powered up version of Chi, and then basically run circles around them in perpetuity.
Yeah, and it's just crazy that in a game with like 20 different styles, they don't even seem to have... Some of the styles have noticeable power, like they deal more damage than equivalent styles. But other than that, there's no real difference. Like the speed of the attacks is not significantly different.
No.
The amount of damage they do is generally not significantly different. There isn't a positional element like, oh, this one moves me forward, but this one moves me sideways.
No, there is.
Like a little
because
bit.
I think the whole part... I think the whole thing is that ZP is trying to point out here is that the damage, the style, there's no like elemental weakness really, even though they all have some mystical element attached to it. It's all about frames and animations. Yeah, am I getting it right, ZP?
Yeah, and then there are some dire consequences to prioritizing frames of animation for a combat system. Is basically you get to a point to where your frames are so ahead of all of the enemy characters in the game that there is no challenge for basically the last 1/3 of the game. I did not find a single encounter. And then why in the world is it that I can stun lock the fucking last boss in this game? That's ridiculous. That's crazy.
I want to jump in a little bit to the combat system here and examine it from a slightly different angle. And Gino can probably help me out here because we are familiar with fighting games to a certain degree, right? So in most fighting games, there's some kind of rock, paper, scissors mechanic where something like basic attacks will be defeated by blocking. Maybe there are some heavy attacks that can defeat blocking. Also, grabs frequently defeat blocking in most fighting games. And then there's things like, well, your basic attacks in turn, they defeat things like special moves or grabbing. right? And there's this like nice balance, this nice harmonic balance, this rock paper scissors effect. But I think the problem that we have here in Jade Empire is that you can just do two of the moves fast enough that they beat whatever the third move is.
Exactly.
So
and then
maybe,
why would you ever use the blocking ability in this game when basically it can be immediately destroyed by the powered up attack? And when dodging is vastly superior to blocking. I never blocked in this entire game.
You're right.
What the block button is.
So
There's a block button, right?
It's space bar. And now when
a very prominent button.
Effectively, when scissors can beat rock by just going fast enough, that's when you have a problem.
When a scissor stabs the shit out of a rock, you know
it just jackhammers the rock until its foundation breaks, and then you have to call your landlord and tell him that Jade Empire is broken again.
Leveling, I just don't like the leveling system in this game. I love Knights of the Old Republic. It's one of my favorite games of all time, but the leveling system in Jade Empire, I think, is not rewarding. I think the fact that
do you mean like how you get EXP or what happens when you do level up?
Yeah, when you do level up and you have to allocate all of your points into your martial styles and they don't carry over, that would have been, I think this system would have done a lot better if there was just like maybe a tech tree or a skill tree rather than leveling up each of these individual martial styles or support styles. Because what would happen is it's like, oh, great, I got a new weapon. Oh, wait, I put all these points in the sword. Now I really have this pull. There are certain advantages with both. I have to put in all these points all over again in this staff just to be able to use it and make it anywhere close to where my swords were. Or I have Ice Shard. Now I have Fire Flame, but I put all these points into this, and now I have to start from scratch with fire.
Yeah, and the problem is, like, the things you're talking about putting points in is, like, my animation happens at a reasonable pace instead of it being this slow wind-up that just gets knocked the fuck out. Or, like, my damage is reasonable. A lot of these upgrades are not things that are optional or additive. They are fundamental to using them at all, which is super crazy, especially in a game that ostensibly you're learning these new styles. You are a student of martial arts and you're picking up these different skills and, oh, now I can become a toad demon. Oh,
you're a kick-ass student of martial arts too. You're the best.
Everyone's telling you you're so good, and oh wow, I learned earth magic. I'm an earthbender now. But to be able to use any of these skills without draining my chi almost immediately, I need to upgrade them, which means you need to upgrade them before you can really use them effectively, which means you're buying before you can't try before you buy, really. And then there's an entire character who unlocks a martial style for you, the Drunken Master style, which is just the worst style in the game. It's a weird system.
And you can't upgrade it in any way, shape, or form, so it becomes immediately underpowered within the next 2 hours that you have it. And then also, why would you have an only support character in a game where you can only have two? So for those that don't know, BioWare games always allow you to have a party of 3 main character and two supporting characters. The reason why Jade Empire only has 1 supporting character with you is because it was built from the ground up for the Xbox, the original Xbox. And they were, I believe, worried that by having too many characters in the screen that it would actually cause the Xbox frame rate to drop. So by building it from the ground up for the Xbox, they only had 1 character. And the problem with that is that doesn't really motivate you to use certain characters in the game. At all. And the fact that you can't level them up means I have no real in-game reason to experiment with different combinations of parties. And sometimes
I'm invested in any of them. Like, feel like, oh, now I really need to use this person.
Yeah. Even though there are situations where it's like you're really supposed to have Black Whirlwind in the arena, but why? There's no real reason for you to do that.
My biggest thing that Jade Empire made me think about when it comes to the combat system is what is the role of status effects in role-playing games? Because Jade Empire did it so poorly, and there are so there.
Are you talking about the gem system or the technique system or both?
I'm talking about the types of status. So your support skills like Storm Dragon, Heavenly Wave, Paralyzing Palm, all these different styles inflict a status effect on, and some of the magics too, like Ice Shard also slows enemies down when you hit them with it. But some of these different each of these different styles inflicts a status effect on your enemies. Storm Dragon paralyzes them so they can't move. Heavenly Wave slows your enemies so that their animations are super duper slow. Paralyzing Palm also paralyzes, but instead of it being electricity, it's chi punches or something.
They essentially do the same thing, and there's no real tangible difference between the different styles if they do the same exact thing.
No, and like Ice Shard slows. Like there are a billion different ways to slow or freeze an enemy, but each of them is technically a different kind of status effect.
I will give you that if they had just done something to make us motivated to switch from one style to the next, like have there be elemental weaknesses of some kind. They give us access to elements and stuff. Why not just have there be a simple wheel of, water beats fire, fire beats air, air beats ground, whatever it might be. And that would motivate us to maybe mix up our fighting styles. Now, I don't have a critique so much with the fighting styles not having that layer of depth. I do have the critique of every single status effect effectively does the same thing with a different animation. They just get sort of disabled.
Yeah, but my question is more like a existential why does this exist question. Because so many different RPGs have different status effect systems. JRPGs have, poison, they have
confusion,
stone,
rage,
confusion, berserk,
Toad.
all these different Toad.
Toad.
The Persona games, they also have their own set. There's a bunch of different status effects that these games have kind of agreed are worthwhile and that to have. But ultimately they are there. Your goal is almost always to just get your enemy's HP to 0 one way or another. So why have these effects that do things that, some of them do slow damage, but some of them add like this extra layer to the combat. Confusion makes it so a character maybe hurts their allies, hurts their enemies. It adds a bit of randomness, a little bit of texture, rather than having just every move knocks a certain amount of numbers off your opponent. It allows a kind of craft to how you would attack these different enemies. But I think this game made me realize one of my biggest problems with role-playing games is when they have a status system, but the statuses do not apply to bosses. So you might be reliant on a poison spell or a sleep spell, but that almost never applies to a boss that is worth killing. It applies to all these random malooks that you run into, and you kill them easily by using the status effect, and then this pet strategy that you've been using, worthless when the rubber hits the road. However, the complete opposite of that is Jade Empire, where every single enemy that is worth a damn is vulnerable to the exact same shit that you throw at their henchmen. And it turns out that is just as bad. That is just as bad as this pet strategy not working at all when you really need it. And it leads me to think the answer is maybe something along the lines of like the Persona series. You can do buffs and debuffs on bosses, but you can't use like the large, super impactful status effects like paralysis on them, generally speaking. Or I'm actually playing Final Fantasy V right now, and that game, several bosses, even the final boss is vulnerable to certain status effects, but each boss is vulnerable to different ones. So you can't just use the same status effect over and over and over again. You have to kind of look up, what's this guy vulnerable to? And depending on what your team is, you may or may not have the ability to exploit that vulnerability. But ultimately you can win even if you can't. This game, it's just like stun lock, whatever your stun of choice is, stun lock them, and then beat them to death.
I would even propose that BioWare figured this shit out by the time they made Mass Effect, to where you have to use like manual attacks to lower the shield of the character before you could use the status effects on any character. Especially in Mass Effect 2, where all of the classes had some sort of overshield or technical armor or like magical aura around them, but science fiction. And then you had to lower that using your guns before you could do all the cool magic shit, science fiction magic shit on any of the characters.
Yeah.
So I think even BioWare figured out that they couldn't do this again.
Yeah, and by Mass Effect 2, they definitely figured it out. Mass Effect 1, they screw around with different status effects, like the engineer has some status effects that will,
Dampen.
people can't shoot, blow up shields,
or
it'll make it so
overheat.
overheat.
Yeah.
Biotics. It'll get rid of their biotics. However, I found that once you have biotics is actually the ultimate status effect because it makes it so your opponent can't move.
They
So,
just fly.
yeah.
Fly.
I wanted to tell you guys a brief story. There was a long time ago, before the creation of Giant Bomb, when I was a frequenter of a couple of message boards. One of those was the BioWare message boards, which has since been closed down. And I got banned from the BioWare message boards because I may have accused BioWare, the studio, of being racist because of Jade Empire. Now, admittedly, this is teenage high school version Chris. That's my name. So I probably didn't present that idea of BioWare creating this racist, yellow-faced video game in the best way, shape, or form. No, I'm probably lacking in articulation or good diction. But I still stand by my assessment that I think that, one, the voice cast of Jade Empire is the worst. So I actually looked it up. So I'm glad I have you guys here. I'm going to go down this list. I found all of the major voice actors for this game. And I want you to tell me stop when you hear the name of someone who sounds, I don't know, maybe a little bit Asian in this game that's supposed to take place in Ming Dynasty China. So
Fake Ming Dynasty China.
Okay. So, The Water Dragon, Jocelyn Olive. Black Whirlwind, Victor Brandt. Sky, Cam Clark. Henpecked Who, Josh Dean. Sir Roderick, we're going to talk about Sir Roderick, John Cleese, most Asian of the Monty Python characters.
Well, at least Sir Roderick is supposed to be
Yes. Master Lee, Barry Denon. Sagacious Zoo, Robin Atkins Downs. Kang the Mad, Paul Edding. Oh, God, this one's painful. Gao the Lesser and Gao the Greater, Nathan Fillion.
I was going to ask you that. Nathan Fillion.
Yeah, Nathan Fillion, my favorite Asian from Firefly. Death's Hand, Sherman Howard. Ya Zen, Gordon Marriott. Wildflower, Nikki Pugh.
Maybe?
Yeah, how's Pew spelled?
P-U-G-H.
Nope.
Probably not.
Nope.
Okay, this one might get you. Silk Fox, Masamoyo.
Oh,
All right,
maybe.
Yeah,
She's
could be.
Hispanic. She's Mexican-American.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then Dawn Star, Kim My Guest. We
Okay,
have a
so
Vietnamese person.
Oh, wait, one.
One.
Kim Mai.
Kim My Guest. So, this is a problem.
So we should
The
probably...
worst part is when these goddamn characters inflect deliberately in order to create an Asian accent. Like, that killed me slowly every time that fucking happened in this game. Like, it was like a slow stab through my heart.
Well, it's probably worth mentioning you have Asian heritage and probably are more familiar with some of the accents they are trying to affect.
Yes, but it's very clear that this is a white cast doing Asian characters. Remember when Disney made Mulan and they avoided this entire problem by casting only Chinese Americans for their voice cast?
That's not true.
I don't
Almost-
remember that.
Yeah, almost
But
all.
I'll take word for it.
I'm pretty
But, yeah.
sure Donny Osmond was the guy who was the general.
Ones?
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy was
Sure.
the dragon, wasn't he?
Yeah. But some of the major roles were actually cast. And then, okay, I got to tell you guys a story. I played this game with my Japanese grandmother in the room way back when I had my original Xbox. And the reason why I did that is because my Japanese grandmother loves the Chinese 4 classics like The Water Margin, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Journey to the West, and The Dream of the Red Chamber. Those are basically my bedtime stories because, and I've talked about this before, my parents worked multiple jobs to kind of support our family because for the most part, I was not in a very financially stable family. They worked real hard in order to provide for us. But I was basically raised by my grandmother, and my bedtime stories were the 4 classics. And yes, my grandmother was Japanese, but she studied Chinese classics. Like, that was her stuff. And one of her favorite stories was the story of Dong Ping. Now, Dong Ping, it was the classic story of basically Ragged Dick in the Western sense of rise from rags to respectability. So Dong Ping starts as like this army grunt. He's a soldier, and then he realizes that he's given an order by his general, and the order is incorrect or bad. It's to abandon these people to outlaws and have the entire city get destroyed. And he disobeys his orders to fight those outlaws by himself, and eventually he joins those outlaws to fight the Imperial Army. He becomes one of the greatest generals in Chinese history or Chinese mythology. And he makes, because this is ancient China, he makes the ultimate sacrifice for his country by defending and holding off these invaders. I think it's strongly implied that they're Mongolian invaders, so as that the last civilians of his city that he's been protecting for his entire life can leave and leave safely. So Dong Ping meant a lot to me, okay? Dong Ping was kind of my hero, my thing, my jam. And then I found out that there's a character in this game called Dong Ping, and I found out in Jade Empire, I saw this. Dong Ping is in the tea house, and he's a peasant farmer. So they even reference these characters from the Chinese classics, and then just use them as kind of these throwaway characters for their naked attempt to put their BioWare formula on this Chinese setting.
So like it'd be like having King Arthur and he's a farmhand telling you to go kill 7 rats.
Yes. And what really is painful is in the creation of its mythology, Jade Empire creates this amalgam culture where Taoism, Confucianism, legalism, and even Buddhism are in this happy marriage. Like the Great Wheel is clearly pulled from the Great Wheel of Buddhism. And the morality system of light and red and these 2 philosophies based off of Taoism. And there's a sense of filial piety, leading by example, and ethics that are pulled from Confucianism. And legalism is the idea of being united and having this strict ruler, and there's responsibilities of the strict ruler. They're all combined together to be this happy...
And there's elements of inanimate objects and things having spirits.
Which are, clearly pulled from animism. The problem is that each of those philosophies is completely contradictory, and they're distinct from one another. And by presenting them as all being in this happy family or happy marriage with one another, you end up basically whitewashing it. And completely, it's one of the worst parts of the game when I see a legalistic character present the ideas of Buddhism within this game without realizing the contradiction there. And so it's as if, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I don't think that it was deliberately racist, this game. I mean, they certainly could have done a better job with the voice acting. But it's the equal to a white suburban soccer mom watching one documentary about the history of China thinking that they're a Chinese culture professor. And it has the same amount of tact and respect to that culture as the red Solo cup drinker that believes they can discuss metaphysics.
As a red Solo cup drinker who frequently discusses metaphysics, I can comment on some of your points here, ZP. I mean, speaking a little bit of my education and upbringing, both culturally and academically, I came from a very middle-class American upbringing. All of my education was private school, Roman Catholic, and essentially my whole education system was completely sterilized to everything that wasn't, very traditional Western, like I said, Roman Catholic schooling. Now, maybe I've abandoned some of those more orthodox ideals in favor of a more diverse academic outlook on the world. But I have to just admit a lot of ignorance to this kind of stuff. And I think that
No, it's totally fine.
I have to admit a lot of ignorance of this kind of stuff. And I think that BioWare is, yeah, they are at fault a little bit, but how much can we really put on them when perhaps their entire environment was conditioned to be blind to what's really going on in a culture like this? I mean, yes, we could always say that they should have done their homework better, but how much was, how much were they set up to fail from the start?
That's a great point. What I would say is it's kind of the classic example of like when Warner Brothers airs some of their World War II propaganda. They have this giant waiver that says, you know what? These cartoons were wrong then and they're wrong now. But to present them edited or censored would admit and create a bigger sin by admitting that this type of racist sentiment didn't exist in the first place. So I don't think Jade Empire exists in 2016. That's where I would say this is the reason why I'm presenting this. Jade Empire in its current form does not exist in 2016. I think that the industry as a whole has become very cognizant of cultural diversity and being more respectful of the cultures of other worlds.
In the early 2000s, however.
Yeah, I would say in the early 2000s, I mean, I would probably still articulate my perspective as I think it was wrong then and it's wrong now.
I'm going to agree, but I'm going to agree with a twist and say that when I think about the development of games, and I mean, games have been created for home use, recreational home use since the 80s and maybe even before, depending on
definitely before.
Yeah, where you're from. I mean, like what consoles you might have had access to. But when I first think about home gaming systems, I think about Sega, Atari, NES. Those are some of the first gens for me. We had culturally insensitive games then, and we had culturally insensitive games up through the early 2000s. I think only in the recent maybe 5-8 years, maybe less than that, have game devs actually said, hey, wait a second. We might have to make these games not just a point-and-click shoot stuff adventure that doesn't care about what story it's telling. We might actually have to put some effort into this. And Pete would probably echo me here when we start talking about analyzing games as cultural artifacts. Maybe people are getting wise, but it's happening just far too late for some of our cherished or beloved childhood games to be looked at in the same way.
I mean, I think the problem still is especially acute when you think of sort of, and I'll use a term I'm not sort of happy with, but I'm going to use it for the sake of this. You have games that are sort of about the Far East, so-called, because you have these sort of Orientalist, to use a term Edward Said coined. He was an anthropologist, sociologist?
Correct, he was.
Yeah. You have these games that sort of deal with these Orientalist tropes because, like Said said, it's dealing with an area that doesn't really exist, right? There is no Orient. The Orient has been created by the West to sort of function as a tool of imperialism. So I think the first one that comes to my mind, just because it's an obvious and sort of almost silly example, do you remember the recent expansion for World of Warcraft? It was like Mists of Pandaria or something?
Yes.
It's just like, okay, we're going to create this expansion. It's going to be a bunch of panda kung fu experts.
Yep.
Like, that just seems, if you wanted to make an argument for Orientalism in games, that would seem to be the most on-the-nose example I could think of. Admittedly, I haven't played it, but it seems fairly obvious.
In Oriental themed for no reason besides...
Like kung fu master pandas.
Yeah.
Because they're pandering.
Pandaria.
Huge, you know.
Anyways.
It's... You know, they didn't... The thing with me is just, if you're going to make this game, I would say, if you want to make a game about a culture that you are not deeply familiar with, and maybe your familiarity is through fiction, maybe your familiarity is through different types of media, maybe you actually legitimately know people of that culture, and you're perspective is as
Hire
kind of
a
an outside
consultant.
observer. Yeah, hire a consultant. Hire a few consultants. It's not like this game.
Maybe get people to actually do commentary on your game. Like, I don't know, Never Alone.
Yeah, well,
Maybe get-
Never Alone was made by Inuit people from from top to bottom. But
Well, maybe you could get someone who will do maybe like, I don't know, an actual voice acting, like in
totally, but like,
Jotun.
before you even do that, this game, it's not like it lacks for story or it lacks for lore.
No,
The amount of books of just lore that is in this game that you can read through if you so choose is staggering. It's not like there wasn't thought and craft and time poured into this game. It is very it is tons
It's
of time
rich.
and effort was thrown into this, and it's weird to throw that much time in. Yes, it is deep. It's odd to throw that much time and effort into something that can be so culturally sensitive and yet be so, it seems like, so cavalier about repurposing these cultural touchstones of someone else's culture.
You know what the best example of sort of effort that clearly went awry is? It's the language. Like, why invent...
they create the fake Cantonese language.
Yeah, why invent an entire... And they hired a consultant for that. They got, like, an expert in linguistics or something to develop this language. Why? Why do that?
They should have just gone with Al Bed.
Yes.
And why, if you're going to do that, why do you make it so that all the young people speak plain English and all the old people speak fake Cantonese? And it's like, oh, he speaks the old tongue, and implying that this
language is inferior to the other one.
Yes, is inferior to the other one. So, and yet in the world that we live in, both of these languages are spoken by large swaths of the world. One is not an old language that is dead. It's not like they're talking in Latin. They're talking in a language that is spoken by the most populous country, or a fake language.
Yeah, it's supposed
that
to
is
sound
like
that.
Cantonese, which is spoken
why?
by the most populous country in the entire fucking earth, and it's treated like it's a second-class language that's dying. It's crazy when you think about it that way.
So I haven't really pushed back that hard on any of the other cultural insensitivities, but is it so wrong that they made a design choice to have a sort of made-up language just to articulate some small dimension of this, granted, fictional world that they have created? Now, I can't defend this entire design because I think it was completely useless, and it actually served no purpose in the game whatsoever.
Well, it serves a purpose. The problem is when you put these two... Well, they used it to try and show that this world is changing. They're trying to earmark the people who were in the old dynasty versus the new stuff that's happening. I understand the function of the language. The problem is when you have these clear cultural touchstones, that it sounds like Cantonese, it sounds like a Chinese dialect, and then it is put in direct contrast to English, literal English. And they are put into dialogue, and so you have to think, okay, it's like this old kung fu language, which only makes sense if you are a Western person who is viewing the East through this exact same lens.
Let me ask a different question then. From a game design standpoint, there were multiple different language options for this game, such that the protagonists could have been speaking German or Spanish or French. That would have been just as weird as them speaking English.
Yes.
But maybe they had to design some sort of language that just might kind of fucking make sense no matter what country or dialect you're playing this game in. Because if their audience is in Germany or in Spain or in France or in the United States, they have to have something that's going to kind of fit. And maybe this was their best option.
I think the only way that argument serves as a justification is if the language you're playing it in is actually Cantonese. And then you need some differentiation between that and whatever this old tongue is. But I think there's still a more fundamental problem here, is that you can't have it both ways. You can't simultaneously utilize real cultural, historical markers from an existing group while simultaneously creating a fake language for that group. You can't both use a culture and deny another aspect of that culture at the same time.
Yeah, and that's definitely the wonkiest thing. It's just, maybe that's one where you just don't have them speak a tongue. Like you put just some earmarks around it or something, just to not throw off those kind of, alarm bells. I just wonder if I would care if it was in like a fake Latin, because I understand that is a dead language. But it's not like this fake language, this fake Asian language is, just them speaking in a dead language. They made up a entirely fictitious one. It's just that it has all these earmarks, and then it is thrown into contrast with what in our game is English. It's weird to play them off against each other.
Then perhaps if they had just made it a design choice to say, instead of having this language which is old and dying and something lesser, if they had just made it, oh, that's fine, that's just the other one, would that have made it a little bit better?
Yeah, it would have been better. But the part that still confuses me is if you're going to go through all the trouble of inventing a language, surely it would be less effort to just use some historically accurate version of Cantonese if that's the way you wanted to go with it.
Yeah, like if they made it a dead version of Asian language.
I'm sure there's some Latin. Yeah, I'm sure there's some linguist out there who could have done that for them.
Sure. So, this leads us to the fourth and the point that we're going to talk about probably most extensively, and that is
the story.
The story. Now, there's
what were the first three? There was the mechanics,
mechanically technical issues. It's the combat system is broken, and then cultural insensitivity.
Okay, so we got mechanics and tech, combat, and then cultural insensitivity, and now we're on big number 4. Okay, what's up?
Big number 4 is basically we're gonna break this down because we're gonna be talking about this game as if it's like, okay, whatever. I don't know where I was going with that.
Is this the spoiler alert time? Spoiler alert.
Sure, spoiler alert time. So here's the big weird thing about this game. When you break down all the levels, there's only 2 levels in this game. There's 2 levels. This game is half complete. It has you have the belief that there's going to be 7 chapters, and half of those chapters are only 30 minutes long, and the first 3 chapters,
chapter 7.
The first chapter 2 and chapter 3 are 40% of the game. And it's almost as if this game was not fully developed, or they had to expedite a different game, which it turns out was true. It turns out halfway into this game, it's like, hey, we want to work on Mass Effect. So the game starts off with you in the first kind of the tutorial level of Twin Rivers. And I'll say something nice about this game. I think the art design of this game is good, and I think the music is appropriate for the setting. So 2 Rivers is basically where you learn the combat system. It's the tutorial level. You learn about the master and the students. One thing I'm really not happy about this tutorial level, there are multiple mechanics that this tutorial level don't go over. Most notably, 1, area of effect attacks, and 2, the harmonic combo system, which is obfuscated in a fucking side quest.
Yeah, I figured out how to do harmonic combos maybe a third of the way through the game, because different support attacks have different moves that you need to do to queue up a harmonic combo. I thought that I just had to switch from support to non-support.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I did the right one and I saw the meter appear under my opponent, and I was like, oh, that must mean harmonic combo time. And then I realized that if you do a harmonic combo on 90% of the enemies in this game, they immediately explode into giblets.
Then again, it's all kind of moot because you should just left-click them until they're dead.
Yeah, exactly. You could do that too, and that's just as legitimate as understanding the whole conceit of this game, which is this combo system that the game, again, obfuscates by hiding in a side quest that you assume is just some stupid side quest. So, Twin Rivers.
I don't remember if in the tutorial, do they even teach you how to do the area of effect?
No, they don't. I looked back and I remember telling you, hey, Gino, there's this area of effect system. And I was like, I don't remember the game ever talking to me about this. And I was like, oh, that's not right. And so I went through the entire first 2 chapters. You're right. The game never tells you to left click and right click at the same time to do the area of effects. And trying to do the area of effect attacks is not fun because oftentimes it'll detect right or left click instead of just them together. And it's one of the most frustrating
completely
things.
missed that at 100%. Never ever did one of those in the entire game.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Like the lightning storm dragon, the different support abilities have different kind of setups for harmonic combos. Storm Dragon, the area of effect is the one. So if you do your charge attack, it doesn't actually harmonic combo. Whereas something like Heavenly Wave, your charge attack is the party starter, basically.
So, story time. Let's talk about this story. So you're in Twin Rivers. You're learning from this master. And then it's kind of almost immediately nakedly transparent how BioWare, this is a BioWare story. There's this young dude who's talking smack and fawning over Dawnstar. Dawnstar is very clearly going to be your first follower. So the first impressions are... You're the last of your kind, and it's just the most generic possible story they could have done. And
you're the chosen one.
Yeah, so...
Fate tied to the survival of the entire land.
The entire land.
Mm-hmm.
I think the moment I realized...
hero.
I think the moment I realized something was really wrong with the story was when you go to try and get Dawnstar from Gao the Lesser. And one, it's a damsel in distress mission, despite the fact that Dawnstar has already proven herself to be very apt in combat.
She can sword people real good.
The whole point of finding the search for Dawnstar is the fact that Dawnstar is... He throws her in a sack. What is this, the Flintstones? And you enter the swamp and you meet Sagacious Zoo. And boy,
he's quite sagacious.
Zoo.
Before we get to Sagacious Zoo, when you're in Twin Rivers, how did any of you see the game's last twist immediately coming from Twin Rivers?
I mean...
Because the moment...
Dude, Master Lee, you totally know is going to betray you almost immediately.
Yeah. The moment Master Lee's like, oh, you shouldn't be out yet. You were supposed to come out tomorrow. I was like, oh, so you put me down there so that because you set up. It was you. It was always you.
It was always you.
And
I mean, they try to they try to throw you off the trail with like the minor twist where they're like, oh, I'm not Master Lee. I'm really the glorious strategist.
So yeah, he fucking pulls you to the side after you beat up some bandits, and he does some cool kung fu shit in killing the evil bandits and the Lotus Assassins. And you talk to your master, it's like, how did you learn to blow up a fucking boat by hitting it with your fist? And he's like, I'm the glorious strategist, one of the 3 sons of the royal family. And
kung fu like a mofo.
You are the last of your kind. It's this exposition dump. And you find out that you're the last of the spirit monks who the Emperor killed. Master Lee says, I tried to protect you.
You are the last Grey Warden. You are the last Spectre. You're the last Jedi.
Oh, God. And he throws you into a cave to fight ghosts.
You're the last Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, God.
Until
the Spirit Cave, oh my God, the Spirit Cave thing in Twin Rivers is so dumb.
The fucking water dragon is the worst.
Because every time you encounter the water dragon, it's like bludgeoning you with its simplicity and saying, hey, Master Lee isn't what he says. Peace.
Thanks, Exposition Dragon.
What? Yeah, I got it. Sure. How about you tell me about like this whole weird heaven and hell system in the mythos, or how about you give me some more, how do I save you? You should have told me how to do that like the first time.
They're coming for you. You're the last of your kind. You might have to die to rise again.
Look at my hands.
Hands. She was definitely the character who, when the camera zoomed in on those one-on-one conversations, that happened with her the most.
Yeah.
So,
fucking hands.
You get out of this pit after fighting some ghosts. You find out that Dawnstar has been kidnapped by Gao the Lesser. You go through the swamp, which has one of the most dumbest side quests in the entire game, which is finding that dude's cow. And guess what? It's hilarious that he loves the cow more than his wife.
More like Gal the Whipped, am I right?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's not
God.
Gal. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Whatever. Just fucking bad name.
It's actually weird how the side quests in Jade Empire are so obfuscated because there are three side quests that you can do in Twin Rivers, and if you don't attempt them before trying to rescue Dawnstar, they are dead forever. And that's doing that lion statue thing.
Did that.
There's giving that guy $20 so as that he doesn't get beat the shit up.
Yep, did that one. And
then there's
missed
giving Kia Min the medicine. And
did that one.
here's the big problem that mission kind of highlights is originally the game proposes like Closed Fist as being not necessarily evil. It's just people who believe in like this libertarian philosophy of you have to fight yourself and this Darwinian idea of survival of the fittest, and the open palm is a more altruistic. And then almost immediately after proposing that dynamic, that moralistic dynamic, open hand, good. Closed fist, evil.
They try it a little bit later on with like the flooded city.
Yeah, but the nuance there is even
it's so
superficial at best.
It's like, no, the town needs to work its way through this economic crisis.
And so you're going to teach them that by destroying the dam forever.
Now, I have a question. There was one other mission which was doing the contest with Smiling Mountain.
Oh, yeah, Smiling Mountain. Yeah, that's also something that can get closed unless you do that.
That's the only one that I missed. What happens when you do that?
You get a pretty good buff.
You get a pretty good buff.
The whole game's different.
No.
Right,
but and then also, we didn't talk about this. The buffs in this game are pointless. Because you can just get like 4 or 5 gems and those boost all of your stats.
Way higher than any of the buffs do.
Any of the other buffs. So Dawnstar's in a sack.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah. So,
Dawnstar's in a sack.
Yeah,
let's have you finish with. So it's hard to jump in because this is more of a lengthy design choice with
just whatever you want to say, Billy.
Just speak
whatever.
Billy. This
so
is safe space.
I like.
We might mock you.
How the gem system worked. I thought that the natural progression of you getting essentially 3 ability points to spread around wherever you wanted to between your essentially HP, MP, and AP in other game terms. You essentially have like health, magic, and then ability points.
Focus points.
Yeah, focus point. Just whatever. And I actually appreciated them giving us a slow scaling and having us have some choice in that slow scaling because it made it easier for me to swap back and forth between the styles. You're right, ZP, that it had a minimal impact, but I think that small natural scaling was necessary for it to have, like, I think it kind of greased the wheels for the gem system to work, because if you didn't have that slow natural scaling, whatever you weren't gemmed into was just garbage straight up.
Sure.
So I got a gem that gave me like plus 12 to my mind, which was the stat that I was prioritizing the most. And that was great. And then I actually had all of my other gems used exclusively for conversation.
That's
buffs.
Totally what you need to do, because the conversation system is kind of a big deal, and those stats are, I would argue, more important than increasing your focus or any of the other major in-combat attributes using the gems.
Because you can punch everything to death regardless.
Right. Yeah, because you can punch everything to death regardless.
If I wanted to switch to a conversation loadout, it was easy. But then as I was going through the forest where there was lots of ghosts, I used the chi empowered strikes much more frequently there, since they had greater effect on the enemies. So I just swapped into a more chi heavy build, even though I used more weapons and focus points for the rest of the game. I appreciated there being a level of scaling that stat wasn't dead from the beginning of the game just because I chose not to prioritize it. I sort of kept it like at a decent ratio leveled up. Essentially, I think my ratio was like in the order of HP to mana to ability points. It was like 7 to 5 to 8. I always had like a little bit more focus points than health, and then maybe like 2 standard deviations less of mana. But if I wanted to have more mana, it was easy to do so, and I wasn't crippled because I had that slow scaling. So that was my little 2 cents about the level up system there. I had no problem with that. I thought it did its job well.
It was fine. The main problem with the game is that you can stun lock everything to death, and it
that's
doesn't matter
the glaring
what any of
issue.
your stats are.
Not the stats.
So Dawnstar's in a sack.
She's in a sack. The
She's in a
princess,
sack.
And she's in a sack,
castle.
and then she's not in a sack, and then you have to rescue her despite the fact that she's just as powerful in combat as you because this is a video game. So you beat up Galilester. He says, there's going to be this impending crisis. I rescued you. Why aren't you grateful? It's like, why didn't you just tell him?
Marry me.
Why didn't you just tell her that, hey, I called my dad. My dad's going to send the Empire to kill everyone. But no.
He's not a charmer.
We kill Galilester, and then with Sagacious Zoo and Dawnstar, did you guys like the gummy ship missions in Kingdom Hearts?
My favorite part.
Because
Fuck that.
I made my gummy ship into a dick.
You would.
this game
Fucking would.
has the worst version of 1942 I have seen in a video game ever.
So I have a question, ZP.
Sure.
Did the option to evade exist in the Xbox version, or is that a hot PC exclusive?
No, that always exists.
Oh, thank God.
It always existed that you could avoid. The only ones that are required, I think, are the very first one.
Yes.
Where they teach you how it works.
Where they teach you
you
how
can
it works,
never
and
do it
then you're
again.
like, man, fuck this.
Fuck
And then they
that.
give you a character whose sole purpose is to, like, further the flyer or upgrade the flyer in the form of Kang the Crazy.
Kang the Mad.
Kang the Mad, and his entire story arc is nothing but a deluge of flying missions, so why would you ever do his character arc?
Those sweet
I-
hater blockers, though.
I liked his character a lot. Actually,
We'll talk
Those
about
hater
it
blockers were on
later.
point.
I think it's an interesting character arc, why you would obfuscate it in the worst minigame in the entire game. Ugh.
I really liked that they had Morden Solus in this game. That was pretty great.
Yeah.
They snuck Morden into this game.
Yeah. So, your entire village is on fire. Everything's on fire. People are dead. And you get the introduction of basically Death's Hands, the Lotus Assassin, and Inquisitor Lee. Or Grand Inquisitor Gia. And here's the problem that I have, is they introduce the Lotus Assassins as being this awesome threat, and then they are comically underpowered for the rest of the goddamn game.
Yeah, the first time when the dude brings the dead back to life, I was like, oh, these Lotus Assassins seem pretty messed up.
Dudes are legit.
And then you're just snapping their necks.
And then basically there's no difference. Maybe they do some different martial styles. They use this weird poison attack, or they hit you with the wind power and they spin you around a couple times. But
Oh, no.
no, there's no real discernible difference. They don't even have immunities to
Or
the support
special
stats.
weapons, really.
No, they fight exactly the same. So essentially you fly this flyer out and you crash it, of course, in another swamp. It's amazing how this game has like 4 or 5 locations. And you learn, 1, you need a flyer. 2, you need a map, because apparently wind is basically the same thing as the oceans. You need a wind chart to figure out how all the currents are of the wind in ancient China. And then you need some other stuff. I forget what the third thing you need.
An inscrutable power source.
You just need an inscrutable power source for your thing.
Which awesome name for a video game. I mean, props where props are due. Inscrutable power source. Like, if you just wanted, like, we're going to put 0 effort into explaining what this thing is and what it does. No, it's just inscrutable.
Did you guys ever
We need
hear?
a bullshit engine?
Did you guys ever hear that in Star Trek they actually created a new part to the Starship Enterprise called the Heisenberg regulator? Once the Heisenberg uncertainty principle was kind of figured out, they were like, "Shit, this would like break all of
We need
like
to
what our
regulate.
current pop culture space travel is. We need a Heisenberg regulator on our ship so that we can make this make sense in real science." The inscrutable power source is that, but in
Star
Jade
Trek
Empire.
is best.
And I would actually argue that the game's best individual showcase of like, oh, your choices actually have an impact. The environment can be changed. I think Tien's Landing is the single best level in all of Jade Empire because you actually can see this transformation of this level depending on your choices.
I mean, it better be. It's one of two.
It's one of two?
That isn't immediately disposed of.
That isn't immediately disposed of. So you eventually go into this town, Tien's Landing, and it's seen some better times. There's this dam that's basically causing the financial and economic ruin because it's lowered the water levels. There's a bunch of drunken captains that can't leave.
The booze industry is thriving.
The booze industry is thriving. You meet this lady called Hui the Brave, and she basically brings you up to speed. You're the last spirit monk. Master Li's been planning you to basically get rid of the evil emperor for decades, if not centuries. There's secret amulet pieces because I guess they've thought, why don't we learn something from the most contrived part of Final Fantasy? There's all these pieces that you have to gather together, and then it's going to make this super powerful gemstone that's going to empower you to defeat everything in your way.
You're going to kung fu the shit out of them.
Yeah, and you're in this tea house. The tea house has some nice moments. I think the fight there where you're basically doing all of these cartwheels and you can basically destroy all of the environment or the furniture in the tea house. And you can actually pick up pieces of that destroyed furniture and hit people over the head with like a leg of lamb or a leg from the table. But this is
isn't that the only place?
That is the only time that is there. So why the fuck is that there?
I like the ogre.
Yeah, the ogre mission is fine. It's the first example of there are side quests in this game that can give you XP that don't involve combat. So you can completely avoid grinding. And in fact, you shouldn't grind in this game because there's only 33 levels. And all of the missions here are dialogue prompts or fetch quests. And the other ones is sometimes the conceits behind the side quests are more interesting than the conceits behind the main quest. Like getting that guy drunk to find out that he had the deed or he forged the deed of the tea house so as that he could run the show. That was kind of interesting. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, that seemed to make an impact in one of the characters' lives.
Yeah, but this is one of two locations where that happens.
Well, there was also the one where you have to go to the sort of gang leader and make her hook up with one of the other members of the town.
Because
I kind of want to settle down.
It's not sexist in any way, shape, or form to suggest that what completes her and pacifies her in society is a man.
Well, hang on. I don't think she said, I want a man. I think she said, I want to have a family. I don't think she said, I need a man. I think she said, I want to have a family.
Make her domicile by giving her a relationship.
She's the chief of a gang.
Sure, but as a person who is also pretty free and able to do what they want when they want, I also am really looking forward to having a family at some time.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. One of my favorite things is when you do the dialogue for that and you find out the reason why she's beating up this bread maker is, you promised me that you would marry me when we were young kids, and then the two choices are, hey, that's kind of ridiculous, whatever your name is, and then the second option is, a promise is a promise.
Yes. Hang on. There's also the option of, hey, the two girls fight to see who gets to marry.
Yeah, there's also
that. And that actually fucking happens. I chose that option, then reloaded the save, and she just murders everybody.
Who wins?
Oh, of course the gang leader just annihilates that girl.
Did she kill her?
She kills her and the dude, too, I think.
Yes.
Like, she just kills everyone, except for the protagonist.
And I think you have to find her a husband. After that?
I think you have to kill her. I think you can't leave until everyone's dead.
It creates a fail state where basically you can't do the second part of the mission.
No, the three-way later in the game becomes a four-way, and it just escalates from there.
God. There's I think two guys you can have her married too, right? There's the dude in the tea house, but also the dude who's like chilling outside. Who's like the farmer.
No, there's a third option, and that's the best option. It's the guy who's doing the basket weaving or woodcut business, and he's actually the best option because he's a bad business person, but he makes a high-quality product, and she's a good business person, but she's not a nice person with PR skills. So that's actually the best possible relationship for her.
So we learn about economics while we're at it.
Yeah. But you
I had her
never
marry the farmer.
but you never really see anything follow up on that. So the big problem facing Tien's Landing is the fact that there's this dam. The evil emperor has closed the dam, or actually the dam is open, and that somehow is basically leading to the river being real low where Tien's Landing is. You meet Minister Shang. Oh, God, Minister Shang.
Speaks in the first person?
Yeah.
Third person.
That threw me off. Yeah. Third
Most
person.
of us
Minister
speak in the
Shang! Oh, God, his accent is the worst. And then Minister Shang says, I'm going to give you the key to fix this dam business. And then also, by the way, there's a second part to this mission. You got to go kill all the pirates. So here's one of the big problems with Tien's Landing. It's a very open, but it lacks any real... It obfuscates all of its missions in a way that's really frustrating.
Yeah, other than the dam being a clear thing that you need to do, I stumbled upon the forest and then
it's almost as if the evil contaminated forest is a side quest. You don't know that is actually part of the critical path that progresses the story.
Yeah, not until you
get a little, like, 20 minutes in, you're like, oh shit, this is a part of the critical path.
You give me the win. Until someone says, oh, I will give you my thing that fixes your flyer. Then I knew that it was a main thing.
I've always viewed the correct step for this to be fix the dam, go to the sickened forest, and then deal with the pirates.
That's the order I went in, but that also makes it extra weird because you don't have a flyer and you don't know what the fucking inscrutable power source is.
Sure.
So for a while, I got the inscrutable power source and thought it was like part of my bracelet.
It's like, man, I really wish I could scroot this power source, but...
Yep. I'm like, well, I guess
I also had no idea what this item was.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you fix the dam, you find out basically there's this area in Tien's Landing, Old Tien's Landing, that's basically haunted. And I think I remember I said one of the major side quests that I wanted you to complete was deal with the orphanage scene in Old Tien's Landing.
Old Tien's Landing, yes. Yeah. We did that. I did that, yeah.
The drowned orphans kind of highlights one of the weirdest things that I have, in that why in the world are like 60% of the cutscenes hidden in a random grouping of the side quests in this game? Like, some of the assets were used in a real odd way, or an odd fashion, because you basically go to this orphanage, you find out that it was abandoned, or he basically left to get food. The dam flooded the entire area where Old Tien's Landing was found. Everyone who was living there died. And this orphanage has two kids. One who's clearly like, I want to kill the guy who ran the orphanage. And another who's like, just please allow him to bury our bones. If you elect to condemn him to hell, essentially, he becomes a ghost side by side with the kids. And if you bury the bones, you get a weird cutscene where he comically buries these, like, prop-looking
chicken bones, dinosaur bones,
and it's supposed to be this real emotional scene, and it's the worst-looking bones I think I've ever seen. Literally, he pulls out a Fred Flintstone ham bone and starts putting it into the ground.
These children's femurs. It should have just been Mortal Kombat rib cages.
All rib
just
cages.
Like 7 rib cages.
All rib cages.
Weird ass.
These children. Who uppercutted them into pieces? Was it you, Kano?
Two things kind of happen related to the critical path that you could either say. So there's this weird, when you get to Old Tien's Landing, there's this wall and this demon mouse dragon thing. I actually think the demon designs are actually pretty cool. They are honestly based off of Chinese woodcut art and mythological art. We're going to talk about one of the best examples of that with the next character they introduce. There's this side quest where you get gems in the quarry, and there's some really interesting story stuff there, but it's kind of presented in a haphazard way. It's like, oh yeah, you can totally do this. This is not the critical path, but yeah, it's here.
Yeah, there's a bunch of convicts that were basically left behind to drown because they were convicts, and no one bothered to come back and free them. Oh, but wait, the dude who was going to free them got killed by the Strangler because the Strangler was a murderer. And he would have saved everyone, but the Strangler killed him and then convinced everyone that the dude never came back.
Yeah. That's actually an oddly difficult battle with the Strangler dude. That's one of the few times that the game actually gets hard, because ghosts have an immunity to support styles, which means you can't stun lock them. So eventually you do get back onto the critical path. You find the inscrutable power source, and then you find this little girl. And the little girl is possessed by the devil, or actually just the Chinese devil, but his name is Chai Ka. He's some sort of demon dragon thing, but the demon dragon thing's good, so you're totally cool. You have to fight him. That battle can be kind of messed up because demon dragon things have certain immunities that can kind of put you in a bad way.
He is one of the few characters who, when you hit them when they are trying to start an animation, he does not get knocked out of that animation. He has a lot of invincibility frames, which is annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you beat him, I beat him by realizing that all characters have a support and an active mode.
Yeah.
And support mode is way better.
Yep.
Because they just boost your stats. Whatever it is, they just boost it.
So after you beat Chai Ka, you find out that the glorious strategist, your master Lee, has like 3 different peoples who've been waiting for you for thousands of years for you to come along and like just be here. They end up kind of writing themselves out of the hole, but I think it's just like essentially writing themselves out of the hole, how the glorious strategist was able to plan all this. But Chai Ka joins your party. I actually like Chai Ka because I think it's one of the few times when a side character's story arc is actually presented in an interesting and compelling way. You find out that essentially Wildflower died.
Oh, I didn't get that far.
No, yeah. So Wildflower died. Chai Ka saw her body as a vessel, possessed her, but simultaneously Chai Ka and the evil spirit Ya Zhen possessed the body of her simultaneously. The 2 demon spirits fought. Ya Zhen, the evil spirit, who's a toad demon, basically is in that little box in the corner of her head, and she has to suppress him. And if you further her character art, you actually find out that Chai Ka's reward for Wildflower is to live her life however she sees fit, but she's a fucking child with no parents, so what the fuck is she gonna do? So now she's left helpless. And then you meet Silk Fox. Oh, God. So you fix the dam. So did all of you fix the dam and make Tian's Landing a happy place, or did you pretty much condemn Tian's Landing to perpetual pestilence and death and genocide?
I mean, the options, if you want to talk about the comical nature of closed fist versus open palm, it's, well, you can free all of these fishermen, restore all of our merchants, save all of our industry, or you can destroy the dam so that this fucking booze slinger keeps selling booze to these fishermen so that they keep getting drunk and breaking the town, but I'll pay you a bribe.
And the bribe is super... Don't take money in this game. Take the experience, the extra experience points. And here's another weird thing that maybe you didn't notice. You get more experience points for doing the open palm versus closed fist options in this game.
I noticed that, and I have a problem with that. But I would have a problem with that if there was a good reason to spend money in this game.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
If there was something worthwhile to spend money on, I would say there could be a reason why you'd want to do the money option. But there's no good reason.
Do we know what the closed fist technique is, too?
Yeah, the closed fist technique is called Tempest, and you learn it from Jian. And Tempest is essentially the wind power that you get whenever you fight the super bad boss enemies and you get spun around in a cyclone.
So it's the same thing, really, as the open palm, just with a different element?
Yes, it's just with a different outcome.
That's dumb, too.
It's the paralyzing.
And then the real bad thing is because the game incentivizes open palm, most people never get the closed fist options here. And there's an entire side quest, maybe you guys noticed this, called Zyther of Discord, where you have to be closed fist in order to do that side quest. And what's really unfortunate is that, one, there's no open palm version. Open palm.
Right?
Okay, yeah, I guess you could argue that. But the closed fist option is you collect all these artifacts, and it turns out that it's this guy wants to find out and resurrect the body of the person who invented closed fist, and it's actually really cool. but you can't do that unless you can prove that you have 50% alignment to close fists. And because that gives you less experience points, I never have seen that quest. I've had to YouTube it. So eventually, and you can basically, after saving the dam, do any number. You could save the forest, or you could do the pirate things, but I always save the forest. I like the forest in concept, but it's so visually drab, and it's so combat heavy that it just drives me insane. I find it to be, other than the Necropolis in the Imperial Palace, to be one of the most combat oppressive sequences in the game. Because it's one of the few locations where enemies spawn regardless if you defeat them. And those ghost bosses or those ghost enemies are just the worst.
I have a question about that spot. You know those little shrines that react
Correct.
to your chi?
Yeah.
What the fuck do they do?
So
They
if you
light enemies on
deploy
fire.
them while enemies are on the screen and the enemies touch the spots where they restore your chi, they actually set the ghosts on fire.
All right, I thought that happened. Maybe it was a bug, but that shit never worked for me.
It is really inconsistent, and the area in which the box in which they get set on fire is really specific.
Okay.
So I kind of like parts of the Evil Forest. I think it's one of the cooler moments in this game. I think it has one of the strongest cutscenes in the game when the evil, or what is presented as the evil fox spirit, goes up to this dude, turns him into stone, and then smashes it, and then comes up to you, turns you into stone, but you don't turn into stone. You're able to break out of it, which the game never addresses why that happens.
Because you're the last of your
Oh,
kind.
yeah,
She
it did
did
address
it
why that
whatever.
happens. If you talk to the Kitsune god
okay,
lady,
fine.
it tells you later.
Yeah, she didn't want to hurt you.
But what I
It was a
like
test.
about this mission is that it's BioWare doing their homework. You can do any part of this mission in any order that you would like, and it all results in unique dialogue by pursuing that. So I'm not sure if you guys knew this, but you can go to the temple and talk to Spearcatch's Leaf and Black Whirlwind, or you can go to the inn first. And both options result in completely different pathways to accomplishing your goal. If you go to the inn first, the keeper will accuse the forest spirit of being behind all the problems. He'll say that the people in the inn just want to solve this problem. They're victims, but he talks super weird in a way that no one
for
else
dinner.
talks. And then there's this weird guy called Henpecked who's like, hey, these people aren't legit. You should probably talk to them about it. So you can actually lie and say, hey, I'll solve it for you. You can do the closed fist thing and commit yourself to the keeper of the inn, or you can confront him, and you find out that they're all cannibals, and the cannibals are these weird fish monster things. But either way you confront that, it leads to a different path to going to the temple, which has completely unique dialogue. So if you've already confronted it, you can say, hey, the people in the inn were secretly cannibals, or the people in the inn said, you're evil, Mr. Spearcatch's Leaf, and then there's completely different stuff. Now, the problem that I have with this mission is, one, that puzzle is so dumb. The light puzzle, the ritual that you actually have to perform is dumb.
It's a lot of nothing.
The confrontation with Black Whirlwind is just... I don't like Black Whirlwind. I just
He's
don't.
an asshole. He's a drunk asshole.
He's a drunk asshole, and all of his dialogue is just not... He's a bad character.
I think he's supposed to be... He's proto-Rex. You can see I'm a badass who just doesn't care, but he just doesn't have any of the emotional
Except
depth.
Rex is one of the most deep characters in all Mass Effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Rex. If Rex was just the sequence where he's like, "Get out of my way! When I find Fist, I'll kill him." Like
Yeah.
if he was just that for the entire game, that's not a Black Whirlwind.
And then eventually you perform this ritual, you enter Chinese heaven, and that's actually visually my favorite part of the game is when you enter Chinese heaven. It's just this visual, it's such a visual treat. It's all these neon colors, and you see all these fox spirits fighting these toad demons and horse demons. And so there's like these evil demons and good demons, and you're ultimately presented with what is clearly the most naked morality choice. Well, no, not the most naked. It's a very naked morality choice of, do you help the fox spirit or do you help the evil, the mother?
The mother.
The mother. And if
I don't know. If I'm open palm, I guess I'll help this fox spirit save the forest, but I don't know. Closed fist seems like an equally valid choice, helping these cannibals.
Helping these cannibals, and then you go into the cannibal
to death.
You go into the cannibal den. So oddly enough, if you choose to do the closed fist, that battle with the elephant monster and the fox spirit is the hardest battle in the entire game.
Yeah, they're immune to everything.
They're immune to everything. That battle is no joke. That is the hardest boss battle in the entire game, which is basically game saying, hey, you shouldn't do this. You should fight the mother, which is...
And the mother fight is super easy.
Because you don't even need to fight... That battle is poorly conceived. You just need to break down a bunch of pillars which cause the cave to collapse on the mother and kill the mother. And I guess this is the only time Henpecked Who has his character moment, because he appears and is like, hey, I want to see you carry through because these guys basically made me their slave. Let me talk about how much I hate my wife.
He sucks.
Did you guys talk to Henpecked Who and further his dialogue?
Like, barely. He started to annoy me, so I was like, the hell with this.
It's always a rendition of, I hate my life, da-da-da-da-da-da.
It starts with, I hate my wife. I was once a drunk boxing champion, and now look at me. I'm a bun maker. And then, as he keeps going on, he's like, oh, my wife just took it all away from me. Oh, my wife, every time I try to get away, she keeps bringing me back. I'm like, and I always explore the dialogue, like, wait, you were a drunken you were drinking yourself into a stupor? And he'd say, like, oh, this one time I woke up in just this pile of rubble because I punched everything. Like, well, it sounds like you were a fucking drunk. And
it sounds like you were an asshole.
You were an asshole who was blowing money and just beating people up. And then you met this woman who
tried to not have you be a drunken mess.
Yeah. A drunken mess. What a fucking nightmare that is.
So if we want to talk about offensive depictions of alcoholism, you have to find a new flyer by going to the pirate base, and that requires you to talk to Rue the boatswain.
Yeah. Can I just mention that Henpecked Who is the character that we said when he is your sidekick, he just throws you sake and then sake, whatever the hell it is.
Some beverage.
Alcohol.
Fire water.
They say wine. But whenever you drink it, you can use Drunken Master style for as long as you are drunk. But when you are doing Drunken Master techniques, you have a wine meter that is slowly depleting, and also you lose access to every other martial style, support style, weapon style, magic style. All of it is gone as long as you're using this style, which means
you never use...
It also does less damage than the regular moves.
It does more
restricted. It does more at first.
But but you can't upgrade it, so then it's useless.
Yes. So it's like this ridiculous, why would I ever do this? Especially when you can use harmonic combos to one-hit kill, or two-hit kill 90% of the enemies in this game, so why does damage even matter? It doesn't.
So,
the answer is it doesn't.
You go to the pirate base after this drunken asshole takes you there. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but you don't actually need to solve the quest line with... You can actually totally leave the Great Dam untouched. Although it's classified as being a part of the quest, once you get the inscrutable power source, you find out that this weird guy, Inquisitor Lee, has taken your shit, your amulet. You don't actually need to solve the dam. You can walk away from the dam and leave it be. You don't even need to destroy the thing in the dam. It's totally optional. You can walk away with it. And the reason being is you can skill check Rue the Boatswain to take you to the pirate base without fixing the dam.
Oh.
So he takes you to the dam, and goddamn, this game's moralities. You meet this old guy who's like, I used to be the leader of this pirate crew, and now they think me I'm a washed up hack. And it's like, wait, what did you do when you were a pirate? We used to rape and pillage and steal and burn shit and kill people, but now we're dealing drugs, and that's bad. What? Now we're also using Now we're using flyers. Pirates are supposed to be on the sea, but you do the same exact thing. So essentially, you find out that Gao the Greater, the father of Gao the Lesser, who is voiced by Nathan Fillion, has this den of pirates and you want to get his flyer because it's super awesome. No, for realsies, guys, it's super awesome. There's the side quest of rescuing Yi Feng and Fu Yao from the Slaver's Den. Not sure if you guys did that.
Did it?
I did by accident.
You did it by accident?
Intentionally did it.
I punched people to death.
Yeah, you punched people to death.
There were people, and they were made of meat, and I decided that they needed to be made of jelly.
Yeah. And this is where eventually you are introduced to the idea of these, that basically the Lotus Assassins are all over the place. You learn two major things in terms of the story. One, you learn about Kang the Crazy. Kang the Mad. And then also Sagacious Zoo has this weird backstory where he has some sort of stuff related to the Lotus Assassins.
I don't fully trust you yet. Thanks, Sagacious Zoo. Are you just gonna keep talking Yang at me this whole time while cryptically mentioning things that you know? Yes? Okay.
Hey, Sagacious Zoo, let's talk about how this leader of the Lotus Assassins said you have a history with them. I don't know how I feel about having a Lotus Assassin in my party. How about we talk about this? And he's like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's like, but
it's not a choice.
It's just so sagacious.
Okay, fine. And so
I thought he was going to be the Kaiden of this story, to the male love interest, or the female character. But
yeah, it's so much for that. So there's really here's the fun thing. It's again another one of the few examples of BioWare doing their homework. You can actually leave the area with the, what's the name of Magical Dragonfly? Magnificent Dragonfly. You can come back to Tien's Landing, but there's really no reason for you to do this fast travel system because there's only 2 goddamn locations you can go to in the fast travel system. What the fuck? And you can actually go back to Rue the Boatswan, talk to him. You find out, hey, I heard that there was this giant bang and I saw all these flyers moving around, and so I just came by myself. And then you can actually talk to him, persuade him to drop drinking because, you know, talking to someone about the dangers of alcoholism totally works.
Yay.
So you can actually go all the way back and further his arc, and it's one of the few times that the game actually does its homework. Like, actually follows the logical pathway. And then also you kind of have to come back to do the ancient game side quest where you have the choice between Val teaching you Stone Immortal and Gian teaching you Tempest.
Yeah, Stone Immortal, I got Stone Immortal. Are they basically interchangeable?
They are, because again, we talked about this. It's
crowd control moves, right?
It's crowd control. And I would actually argue that I think the magic attacks in this game are criminally underpowered.
You mean the chi-empowered strikes?
Yes.
You can turn into a
Billy, go back
like ice and fire. There's no reason for you to use the powered up or the area effect version of fire because you forces you to be stationary while this dragon shoots fire, and it's super easy to dodge.
Yeah, the fire is the worst. Ice it slows everyone in this area, and then a giant stalactite falls from the sky on top of the enemies, versus fire where you slowly stand in one place as this dragon rises up out of the ground and then has a super small AoE in front of you.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
So
this game isn't balanced.
No.
So I thought the chi-empowered strikes were fine and pretty good, but maybe that's because from the very start of the game I said, you know what? And I'll tell you why I made this choice. I found out that there was a dash mechanic outside of combat. I wanted to go faster, So from the very start of the game, I said, I'm going to choose whatever fighting style lets me get more of the stat that lets me dash when I'm not in combat. So I
Did
chose
you not know how to do focus mode?
Oh yeah. Focus
Okay.
mode is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the game
So
does a horrible job of explaining focus mode exists.
So I found focus mode. It's essentially the way that makes you move really, really fast outside of combat.
Bullet time.
And
Oh wait, you move faster outside of combat?
Yeah,
in
you can
focus?
use
You
it to
can
basically
trigger-
run through the environment.
yeah,
real
Wait,
fast.
does it drain your focus?
Yes, it does.
but like way
But
slowly.
even more minimally than in combat.
Like you can essentially not even worry about running out of focus mode ever and just run through the entire game in focus mode if that's your primary stat. And I did.
Yes.
I was rolling everywhere because
Nope.
I thought that was the fastest way to move.
Focus mode
It's just
just
an
trumps
Ocarina of
that.
Time, bro.
Easy. And so I would very frequently use my blue meter, my magic meter, or for one of two reasons, either healing myself and then once I found out that I could just stun like everybody, I never had to do that ever again. And then I said, what do I use this blue meter for? Oh, G-empowered strikes. And they actually made all my attacks better because I just used the normal ass vanilla attacks, but slap on some key magic to my regular ass attacks, and they just try to do more damage. And that was great.
But remember how this system was done like 100 times better in Mass Effect when they were tied to like character classes and skill trees? Like yellow was like engineering, purple was magic, and then red was just using guns better?
Just hush.
Stop explaining better.
Okay,
versions
so you
of
go
this
to the
exact
Imperial
system.
City, which I actually, again, think is a reasonably good level. It's visually stunning.
It's pretty.
It's a very pretty level, and you find out, hey, we're going to infiltrate, because this is a computer role-playing game, and one of the oldest tricks in the books is every computer role-playing game, especially Western role-playing games, has to have a moment where you infiltrate the bad guys or get thrown in prison. Fable did it. Baldur's Gate has done it. A very comical number of BioWare games have done this trope. It's basically in the belly of the beast is just going into pretending to be a bad guy to learn more about the bad guys and then destroying them from the inside. So
What
you
you're saying is I'm the last Grey Warden, and
Yeah.
I need to. Oh no, I'm the last Spectre, and I need to infiltrate
That's
Cerberus.
you had that right with Dragon Age.
And when you're the last Grey Warden, do you do a infiltration? I forget. I know that you do with Cerberus
Yeah.
in Mass Effect.
The problem
know
is
about Jedis.
how you infiltrate the Lotus Assassins is some of the most contrived garbage in the entire game. So one pathway is doing the
Kick-ass.
arena side quest. The other pathway is doing this real bad, dumb, sneak mission.
Yeah, they're both bad.
The arena side quest is actually secretly the way you further Black Whirlwind's story arc, and I'm not sure if any of you did all of the arena quests. But basically,
I did almost all of them.
yeah, that Royal Rumble mission in there
Sucks
is bad. It's real hard.
because you can't turn people into giblets.
No. Black Whirlwind, it turns out that his brother was at one point Victor or like the arena champion, and he got possessed by Kai Lin and turned into a zombie and turned into
he's
the
the mountain.
Ravager. And Kai Lan has the Ravager attack you, and then when you find out that it's Black Whirlwind's brother, Black Whirlwind kills him to like put him out of his misery. And you actually have the choice of having either yourself fight Kai Lan or Black Whirlwind. It's one of two
Do you
times where
control
you
Black
control
Whirlwind?
Black Whirlwind.
Oh, cool.
But there's no reward for doing so, and then plus, Black Whirlwind as a character dies from this point forward. And the Inquisitors, it's this weird thing where it's really played for yucks. You can either remove Judge Fang by talking to Gentle Breezes and discrediting Judge Fang, or you can do the really dumb thing where you can give turtle eggs to Minister Shang and ruin Shang's career.
Yeah, I had Gentle Breezes take his ring or whatever.
Okay, so there were two missions,
both.
side quests here that I asked you guys to do: the Black Leopard School and then the Outlander.
I did both.
I think John Cleese, his
He's
character is funny, but kinda in the cringiest way possible.
Yep. I'm going to be the most colonizery asshole in this entire place, and I'm going to talk down to all of these people, and then you're going to kick the shit out of me.
And the worst part is that whole the debate aspect of that mission is actually done way better in Knights of the Old Republic, where you have to basically, you are the public defender for a guy who's accused of murder, and you have to collect the evidence and prove his murder, or if he's a murderer or not. And you have to convince all of these judges.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also some of that with Mass Effect, where you have to find evidence for Saren, like to prove that Saren did stuff. Like they've done this a couple of times.
Yeah. So what did you guys think of the Black Leopard School? Because there's this weird, cool, real fun, Matrixy cutscene that I kind of like in that game.
It's amazing that they use these weird cutscenes on these side quests that are completely missable.
Yeah. By that point, I was just sort of fairly exhausted by the content, like by the game. So I was like, oh, well, whatever. Let's just keep moving, plowing through some of this stuff.
I enjoyed after I beat up each of the different students, and they, I had to pick between open palm and closed fist, because once you pick open palm, then you don't have to fight fair anymore, and you can just turn people into giblets. And I found that was pretty satisfying.
And there's a ton of side quests. We're not going to go through all of them, but I basically played all of the side quests. I'll leave it up to you guys. Are there any other side quests in the Imperial City you want to talk about? I think the only other good one is the one in the necropolis with the scientists, where you have to save that little girl by getting a liver for her.
The heart?
Yeah, the heart for the little girl in the necropolis.
You can either get a heart, or you can ask
the guy to sacrifice. There's also a third thing that it's kind of as if they did their homework. You can actually say, wait a minute, I know a doctor. Go all the way back to the arena, talk to Dr. On. If you talk to Dr. On, she'll come all over the place and it's like, dude, I can help you. I've done this surgery 100 times. And then she will do a transfer of the livers, but say, the only good liver we have is yours. And she turns to the father and says, do you want your daughter to live or do you want her to die? And he's like, I guess I want my daughter to live. Sacrifices his life, gives the liver to Dr. On, and Dr. On adopts her.
Yeah, I saw that option, but I was like, I'm not going to fucking run all the way back to the Coliseum. Your daughter's dead, I guess. Sorry. I'm going to go join the Lotus Assassins.
I'm sick of cardio. This blows.
This sucks. I'm not running. That's so far away. That's like 5 screens away. No.
And they all have to load.
Because you didn't have focus mode on max.
No, because the Necropolis has multiple spots where there are random
They're random
battles.
encounters. Oh, fuck.
Would have taken me 14 seconds.
Yeah,
but
they're just annoying.
They're the same enemies over and over again. With the same communities.
My thing with these different encounters and side quests was more an overarching thematic issue I had with the side quests was, and we discussed this a little bit in our JRPG versus Western RPG discussion, but every side quest, by the end of it, there were a lot of side quests where it was just, someone died, or someone's going to die, help. Here's my story, come help. And then by the end of it, you have done whatever the side quest required, you fetched the MacGuffin, you fetched the thing, and then they say, oh my goodness, you're my hero, you're the best, oh my god, you're an amazing person. Thank you so much. And it's just this endless praise loop where every character you help out is eternally indebted to you and will pay you huge compliments. And it felt like this weird feedback loop where there's no side quest where the stakes are super low and people don't feel indebted to you. It makes this sort of transactional... it makes everything super transactional. Like all these different relationships are do the thing so you get experience and praise. And after playing, I think the last game we played, Final Fantasy IX, like a lot of there are a bunch of side quests that are not in that mold, and the level of effusive praise is not the same. You're not treated like a savior because you saved someone's kitten or something, or because you saved the deed to a tea house. They don't treat you like you're the Messiah. And there were a ton of side quests that end with someone going, "Your fighting style is so... There's something odd about it. Like it invites a weakness."
Finger on it, but
something's weird. It seems like a weakness, but then you snap it away at the last second, and it's like, no, I wonder if this is foreshadowing.
Maybe.
No, probably not.
That's subtle.
So you eventually go into...
6 different people said that to me, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if there was a weakness baked into my fighting style.
Yeah.
Who's to say?
So you eventually go into the Lotus Assassin Fortress, and you essentially have... It boils down to 2 major things. You have to create a spirit shard, and then you have to kill this evil master. And what's really weird is how Sagacious Zoo is able to infiltrate this fortress that you have to go through a lot of hoops through in order to get entrance into it, and he's somehow able to just sneak into it no problem. Like, the entrance and the guard accepted him. Yeah, he's sagacious. The first thing in creating the spirit shard, I guess you could say it's really interesting that in order to create the crystals necessary for the Jade Golems, they basically have to kill people and pour magic acid over people and turn people into crystals.
Yep. That whole process is ridiculous. The idea that the dead bodies have spirit shards in them when you have these ghosts walking around everywhere. But then again, I guess when you see the ghosts, they have like a shard thing in their chest.
Yeah.
So I don't know how ghosts work in this world, but you goop people and then they can control golems, I guess. I thought Sagacious Zoo was a ghost at this point.
Yeah.
Because of his sneaking around, but no. It's just a plot hole.
There's something weird about his hands, too.
Yeah.
A lot of people have weird hands.
They're like a different color or something?
No, he wears gloves.
Is that it? He's wearing gloves? Okay.
So you can sabotage creating the soul shard, which you should do because it creates a weird Jade Golem.
Yeah, that you don't have to fight.
And you can free the slaves and all sorts of things. And then you have to kill the master, which I'll give the game credit. You have the option of killing the evil master, whatever the hell his name is, Master Shin. And you can kill the guy, Master Gong, by dropping a golem on him. That's pretty satisfying.
Yep, killed both.
And then we find
somehow
out...
They let you in and you just murder everyone.
You basically murder everybody and no one notices that you're murdering all these fools.
Yeah, because they're real evil. Apparently they murder each other all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you
it's Wednesday, whatever. Murder day.
So it's this almost instantaneous neutering of the Lotus Assassins as a threat is how comically quick and easy you can defeat their headquarters.
We usually brainwash new people, but you seem too useful to brainwash. Go kill everyone. Okay, got it.
Let's take care of that right now.
People.
So you get an audience with Inquisitor Gia, and if you don't stun lock her, she's actually a real hard boss battle.
Well, shame I never got to see that.
But you can totally stun lock her. You kill her, and then you have probably one of the more visually striking moments where Death's Hand comes through the water, and he's got his sword things that look weird. And then he kills Sagacious Zoo, which is actually kind of a surprise. Because you're right, it kind of seems like he's going to be a romance option for someone or something. And
then I realized that unlike most BioWare romance options, he didn't say like something very overt. Like, oh, so you want the D.
Trying to smash? Question mark? Kung Fu and chill?
No, I'll wait on this. So this is basically the point why I would argue that Jade Empire is a half-complete game. The Imperial City is this fully realized location. The Chapter 3 is a fully realized level. Chapter 2 is a fully realized level with Tien's Landing. Chapter 1 is the tutorial, so you could argue it's fully realized. And then the next fucking 1, 2, 3, 4... The next 4 chapters are all one-off levels with no side quests or exploration of the environment. Because you go to the Imperial Fortress, which is this floating thing in the sky. You basically just waltz through because turns out Silk Fox is like the daughter of the princess.
We didn't talk about Sky at all.
Sky is fucking boring.
He's a pirate man. His daughter's dead, and you can go to Bone Town with him. He was the male romance option, it turns out.
Yeah.
Also, if you go down the Silk Fox and Sky options as a female character, the Sky option is given primacy. So if you walk far enough, like if you are a male character, and you are simultaneously romancing Silk Fox and
Dawnstar.
I think you can romance all 3 of them.
You can.
But if you romance Dawnstar and Silk Fox, they will work things out so you can have a threesome.
Yep.
If you are romancing Sky and Silk Fox, eventually, if you are still stringing along both of them, Sky will be the one who wins, as someone who is stringing along everyone. It turns out Sky was the one who was like, oh, I guess we're going to Bone Town.
Yeah, so you go into the Imperial Palace. The Emperor turns out to be a ghost.
Ghost Emperor.
He's a ghost Emperor.
The best kind of emperor.
Forever.
And that's a weird thing.
Even though he's a ghost, he stun locks like a man.
You could stun lock him like crazy. And then... oh boy, and then the plot twist to the game happens.
And then, just like, is this, again, every BioWare game where you die and come back to life? You do, as in Mass Effect 2, you die and come back to life.
Yeah, that happens in Baldur's Gate too. Doesn't happen in Knights of the Old Republic, but... the plot twist here is an inferior version. So you remember when we had our Final Fantasy discussion, Gino, and I was talking about how one of my least favorite things is that there's this one-upsmanship relationship between the previous entries and current entries in the Final Fantasy franchise. That feels like this when you compare this plot twist to the plot twist in Knights of the Old Republic.
Okay, I have not played Knights of the Old Republic, so I don't know what the plot twist is.
Yeah. You go into the spirit plane. And for those that didn't notice, the most powerful sword is in the spirit plane in the very first location. And if you don't take the time to go backwards and pick it up, it's dead to you forever.
I didn't, because why the fuck would I level up anything? It's the end of the game.
Yeah, and you
Shit
also...
about swords.
Also, swords suck.
I went bow staff all the way.
Yeah. This is where I think the game very clearly didn't have enough time in the oven. Because Chapter 5 and the time in the spirit plane and then also doing the stuff in the dirge feels so half-baked.
Question, did you want more game? Because I was really hoping it would wrap up around this time. So I thought it was just right in terms of the length.
Might have even been a little too much game.
Yes.
But how they extend the next 3 sequences is just like, ugh.
Yeah, the spirit plane... yeah, you go back to the water temple and you kung fu some ghosts. The one good thing about that whole section is the ghost cow, the design of the demon cow. Demon cow is a pretty good design. The 2-headed demon cow. That's it. Everything else in that whole section is garbage.
You can actually fight that demon cow earlier if you do Kang the Crazy's stuff. And the way you do Kang the Crazy stuff is he finds this little contraption and he teleports you to a special part of heaven. And you have all these schematics where you have to put shit together and make special stuff.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
And the problem is in order to get schematics, you have to do you have to find them all over the environment. But to find out how to get into different parts of Lord Lau's fortress, you have to do like 3 or 4 flying missions.
Fuck that.
And if you didn't do Kang's missions all the way through, you actually find out that Kang is actually a god.
What?
Kang is Lord Lao, the god of engineering in the canonical Jade Empire universe.
What?
Really?
And he's forgotten because he's basically Prometheus. He gave technology to humans, and so his punishment was he had his memory wiped, and he has to roam the plane of humanity as a dude.
So is he... So all those different
All of the
write-ups
yes.
of different like engineers was all just him?
Yes, he gave humanity technology, and he's Lord Lao.
Oh.
Okay.
So he's Raiden.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, but again, you have to do like 3 extra flying missions.
So,
Fuck that.
so like 4 people have ever found out about it.
Yeah. And then also, in order to do this or see this, you have to do all of the engineering stuff, which that's a pain.
This game has so many fetch quests and needless things that just needlessly extend the runtime.
Then you get to Dirge. And
Cerberus.
Final Fantasy
We wish.
VII, the best one.
you get into Dirge, and Dirge is a really weird level because, one,
It's named Dirge 1.
it's named Dirge, and then 2, it's where basically you have sexy time.
Yep.
And I actually would give praises to how the relationship machine or the machinations of the relationship stuff in this game is very obfuscated, and you have to go out of your way to get a relationship in Jade Empire.
But not that far out
Not
of your
that
way.
far. But every major combat sequence is a mini game.
Yeah, it's weird. You control your side characters, and they are all apparently incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
They
And
just beat the shit out of things. Silk Fox and Dawnstar fighting on the bridge, just one-hit killing Imperial soldiers, was pretty hilarious. Did you find... How noticeable is the difference if you find the fancy weapons?
not really.
Is it not really a huge difference? I found the fancy weapons. I thought that might be the reason why I'm just cutting fools down.
That's the canonical justification for them one-shotting is you found this
Cool
special
weapons.
weapon, but I mean, in reality, it would take maybe 2 hits instead.
Okay.
There's a real weird sequence with Black Whirlwind where Henpeck Hu throws booze at him, and that's the way you heal up.
Yep. He heals with booze.
And then you have the confrontation with Death's Hand. And there's a number of ways that this can play out. Either you can bind Death's Hand after pulling him away from Master Li and make him one of your servants, and that's like the ultimate evil thing. Like basically, if you do that, it will automatically dip you from pure good to evil, like that. And then plus all the major characters will basically call you out and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? This guy's evil. And there's different ways for that to play out. So you can actually lose the confrontation between the spirit of the brother, who is, it turns out that basically Death's Hand is the imprisoned soul of one of the king's brother in a suit of armor.
Third brother.
You can actually lose that sequence, and then the ghost is like, peace, I'm done with both of your bullshit, I'm gone. And then
He's Edward Alphonse.
he just disappears. Or you can win the confrontation, and you have the choice of either binding him as a follower or freeing his soul.
But true or false? Because the water dragon's dead, freeing his soul actually just means he's walking
No, he's
Earth.
the ghost.
Yeah.
He's just,
Remember, though, it takes a little while for the soul to get, like,
Turn into ghost form again.
gone to the fucked up-a-gone of Soul World. So because if you remember, like, the orphan kids, they got temporary peace.
Yeah,
And it
they got
said that-
temporary peace.
And then with your spirit weapon, with your ability as the water monk person, spirit monk, when you kill a ghost, they don't just instantly respawn into madness. They get like temporary release.
So you return to the Imperial City and find out what the big deal is with the water dragon. She's been eviscerated, and basically her blood is the water that they use to solve a drought. And there might have been kind of like an interesting story to this, like I'm going to intervene as the king to placate the demands of my people by killing a god. But the game doesn't really surface that commentary very well.
no, it's kind of crazy. One, how many times you're talking to the water dragon and she's like, oh, what they've done to me. When you see it, you'll just, it's just so bad. And then when you get to the sequences, see what they've done, and it's like this dragon, like its tongue standing.
It
like,
kind of looks like
it
doesn't. It looks terrible. Oh my god, it's terrible. You don't even realize what it is, and everyone's like, "Oh my god."
Oh, it's the worst thing I can imagine. It's like a really poorly designed water slide. No, they turned a god into a water slide. And it just, they were all so dramatic the whole time. And this game has exposition problems. It just lays out in painstaking detail so many different times what the stakes are, who's doing what, and why. To the point where when you're then having the like grand reveal, it's like, well, you foreshadowed this 10 hours ago. I kind of knew it was happening. This isn't a surprise. It's not that impactful. I knew that they killed you. You told me that the first time we talked, Water Dragon. You were like, they killed me, and that's why the dead can't go back. You said it literally every time you showed up. Now that you're standing in front of your desecrated body, I'm like, well, fucking duh. Of course something was wrong. The fact that your body is a slip and slide is not that big of a difference for me.
So, quick question. Did all of you or any of you further Dawnstar's character arc to its completion?
Maybe, but not on purpose.
Did you find out who her father was?
What's the completion?
No, is it
some dude? Is it Master
Lee is Dawnstar's father.
Of course he is.
And basically, Silk Fox. The reason why you can't have Dawnstar and Silk Fox in the same bed is because they're technically sisters. We're actually
you totally can
cousins.
You totally can.
Yeah, you totally do that,
Totally
right?
bone both of them.
Really? Huh?
Yeah, there's a threesome option.
Oh
if
wow,
you're a dude, you can talk. That's actually the only option. If you string both of them along, when you die, they will eventually talk to each other and work out their differences. And then if you pick one of them after that point, they will be like, no, we worked out our problems. And then you get neither of them. So you have both or neither at that point.
Wow. So it turns out Dawnstar is Master Lee's daughter. That you remember when Sagacious Zeus said he saved a baby from Dirge? Dawnstar was that baby. It wasn't you. You were saved by a different monk.
He looks good.
Yeah, I guess you're right. He must be ancient.
He looks good for how old he is.
And if you bring Dawnstar, basically, Master Lee says, I don't care about you. You were dead to me when I first became evil. Get out of here. And you have a final confrontation with Master Lee, and like with any of the human boss battles, you can stun lock him and defeat him like in minutes.
Yep, that's what happened. And that's how the God Emperor, who was siphoning the power of the Water Dragon and who had planned all these things, that's how he went down. He went down by getting punched once with Electric Hand and then hit 3 times with Rapid Punches.
As if that wasn't anticlimactic enough, the game ends with you reading pages from a book in order to find out where all the characters were.
It's very Fire Emblem.
Oh, God.
Very Fire Emblem.
It aspires to Fire Emblem.
God, Fire Emblem's best.
Kang's a god. Sky actually becomes the president of the guild, the people who run the arena.
Yeah, and my character was a lady, and so Sky and her had a long tryst.
Yeah.
Does it actually say tryst?
Did you pick?
Of course it doesn't.
Did you pick the Radiant character?
Who's the Radiant?
Radiant Genzin.
Who is that?
What does she look? Is she blue? Or...
She's got the red dress.
Okay, yeah.
I picked the red dress one.
Yeah.
I was Furious Mike.
Furious.
I was Man Puncher Lou. Lulu. Man Puncher Lulu.
No, I picked the red dress girl as well.
3 people, all red dress girl. Look at that.
Yeah. Well, she's the first option to pick, so why would you? Plus, the idea of there being character classes is so benign.
Character classes didn't matter. I made a custom class. I just picked
Furious Ming.
I also custom class, but I picked her model.
Yeah, I think she was the least scantily clad somehow.
Yeah, she was pretty reasonably dressed.
Furious Ming was showing a lot of skin, but I appreciated it.
Okay.
So,
well, That's the end of the game. That game's really bad.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't have that much problem with the game. Like, I figured out the combat. The combat, sure, it's not as rewarding as like a brilliant combat system that, a game like Fury has to offer.
Or like Kingdom Hearts.
Or like Kingdom Hearts has to offer. Specifically Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. You know what? Honestly, Kingdom Hearts and Kingdom Hearts 2's combat systems compare favorably to this game.
Yes,
they compare
do.
favorably to most games.
So, okay, so like, I figured out the combat system of Jade Empire. It wasn't all that bad. Sure, it was maybe, like, once you figure it out, you just do the same thing and it works for every boss. Yeah, that's a little bit lame.
Until numbers change.
That's a little bit lame, but...
A little bit lame.
It wasn't as stupid as Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
Well, at least with Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, I had to think for the whole game, and I didn't want to.
You had
but
Shadow
I
the
had
Hedgehog.
Did Chaos.
This game would be a lot better with Shadow the Hedgehog.
So,
downloadable Shadow the Hedgehog.
My problem with this game...
Is there a big modding community for Jade Empire?
There actually is.
Black Whirlwind.
Is there really?
No, there's not.
Well,
there's
I guess there was. Because there are mod versions of this game, yeah?
Yeah, there's a mod that I used to use that basically puts in clothing so that you can actually change what your character looks like.
Oh.
Wow.
Something that's in every other BioWare game ever.
Shadow the Hedgehog, the Black Whirlwind.
My issue...
Get on it, mod community.
Black Whirlwind.
My issue with Jade Empire, and I do have a major problem, is that I think this is one of the worst... what's the word for it? Not morality system, but...
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Yeah, it's like the worst karma system that I've ever seen in a game. In most karma systems, well, there is a choice in this one, but it's just the wrong choice, objectively.
It's just not compelling.
It seems like when people make karma systems, one of them is going to sort of actualize who you are as a protagonist better than the other. And I'm choosing my words carefully. Like, if you choose the way of the open hand story points, it seems to make more sense with the sort of story that Jade Empire is trying to deliver. The closed fist ones just don't quite make as much sense. They seem to create these little hiccups in the story. Like, well, you kind of just damned this village to economic ruin, but it'll be fine, right? You're supposed to save the world, but not this spot, right? Or, yeah, you're supposed to really save the world and help the spirits find their rest, but you could also help these two little kids murder some guy so that they get their, it's sweet vengeance.
I love that little girl. Fun. Like, the dude was just like, no, we should be merciful. Just bring me his head.
Well...
When I touch people, they suffer.
When I think about the light side and the dark side karma systems, I don't want there to be good and evil, because that is just going to make people objectively skewed towards the good side. What I really want is for there to be two sides of a coin, and you're not sure which one is better or worse, and you also could very easily pick both. Because when I think about the closed fist system, and they had an opportunity for this to really be fleshed out, closed fist doesn't need to mean evil. It could just mean, ambition or driven. There could be really compelling reasons to choose closed fist option, and if they had compelling reasons for both, great. I've actually never seen a game have the quote-unquote dark side be better, with one exception, and it was the infamous games, where you can choose light side or dark side, and it also had zero impact on story. There was no compelling reason story-wise to choose light side or dark side, but the dark side combats, skills, were just way more fun and better. The light side ones were like, oh, you get to harmlessly lock down somebody, and that's how you quote unquote kill them without killing them. Oh, sweet. But the other ones were sweet explosions and multi grenade type deals. It was fucking sweet.
Your grenade becomes more grenades.
Yeah, your grenade becomes more grenades. But back to Jade Empire, we have yet another vanilla good versus evil morality choice, where not only does picking good make more sense for the story, it's also just straight up better, because you get more money for the evil, more EXP for the good, and getting more EXP is just infinity times better than getting money, because there's nothing to fucking spend your money on in this game.
And the thing that I found most compelling about what you just said, Billy, was that story-wise, you are the savior. You are the savior of this world. In what context does it make any fucking sense that you're going to do most of these evil choices? And when they explain why the evil choice is, like, okay, it is because it is expeditious for you. Like, it might help you in your larger quest. But a lot of the things, like, when they say more expeditious, it's literally like a laziness thing. Like, why do this extra step if you don't have
So
it?
yeah,
Why
we'll kill him.
Yeah, like, why talk to this person when you can just punch him in the face till they're dead? Well, because maybe there's a good reason? No, you're the savior, but you don't want to spend the time. Or, like, oh yeah, the mother can help you save the world, but maybe, like, doom this forest? You're a spirit monk. Your whole thing is bring order to the celestial bureaucracy. You're, like, a tool of the fucking order, the celestial some bullshit. That's your role. That's what you're supposed to do. It makes no sense that you're just gonna fuck it all up. And the final choice, I think it's a lot more compelling, honestly, to make the closed fist choice, because it seems like the celestial bureaucracy is a crock of horse shit.
Yeah. It seems like actually sacrificing a god to save the lives of thousands, if not millions of people, kind of makes sense.
A little bit, yeah.
Especially since it seems like the only reason why the dead aren't moving on is because the emperor who was in charge couldn't figure that shit out. Not that the water dragon couldn't, because the water dragon's dead, you can't have the dead move on. It seems like that's a problem that they could actually solve. But no, nope, order's been tossed.
Nope.
So
Fuck it.
Yeah, and like every time you interact with heaven, there's some stupid, crazy bullshit. Like the merchant guy that pops out of nowhere and he basically sells you all that shit.
yeah.
Everything he told you about how it's a nightmare in the celestial bureaucracy sounds like they don't have their shit together, even though they're gods.
Yeah, it seems like maybe the dude who had this elaborate 20-year fucking plan to train you, but good enough to kill his brother, but just bad enough so that he could kill you by throwing a rock in the air or some shit. Like, it seems like that guy had his shit under control. Maybe he could have an empire that everyone's relatively happy. And yeah, he's authoritarian very clearly, but it seems like under the right hands, having his powers might be better for the world. And then you can make a convincing argument why Closed Fist is actually a good choice. But that's not the argument that this game makes. They invest, like, no time into expanding on what that would mean, picking the Closed Fist option. Like, what would your character do with those powers? Why would you want to do that? Nope. You're just going to snap necks.
And what's so odd is I think that there are BioWare games prior to this which have that very typical, like, there's a good guy and a bad guy option that do this better, whether it be Baldur's Gate or even Knights of the Old Republic. In Knights of the Old Republic, yeah, it's about Star Wars, but you are either a Jedi or you're a Sith Lord shooting force lighting out of your hand and fucking killing people. So yes, it makes sense to have one of the spectrums in the morality system be just kill dudes.
Yeah, this game's bad, I would say. Your combat system shouldn't be solved in the first 2 hours of your 12 to 15 hour game. And by solved, I don't mean like, oh, I know what to do, and now I kind of... No, I mean, I do literally the same thing every fight.
Final Fantasy
Almost
8?
every fight. Yeah, that game's combat system's fucking broken. It's a bad combat system. Like, it's interesting. There's a lot more work to break that combat system than in Jade Empire. Jade Empire is like, you get two different fighting styles, and then you just combine them to turn enemies into giblets for the rest of the game. Final Fantasy VIII, at least you need to figure out how that system works. It's just crazy that this game was released in this state, but then again, they've realized that Mass Effect was a game they wanted to spend.
Yeah, and that's maybe the nicest thing you can say about Jade Empire is if BioWare doesn't swing and miss, I don't think Mass Effect would have become the venerated series that it is today, because there was kind of two split paths that they were going in. The combat system that you saw in Dragon Age, which is more rooted in the traditional CRPG roots, and the more action-oriented gameplay that they started with Jade Empire and eventually kind of perfect by Mass Effect 2 and 3. So if they don't swing and miss here, Mass Effect might have been like a turn-based hardcore CRPG.
Thank goodness it is not. I mean, I liked that in Dragon Age Origins. Like, I think that is a viable path towards gameplay. It's just not for what Mass Effect was going for.
Sure.
And even this game, I think, could have been closer to Dragon Age and would have been fine. The problem is not that the mode of operation was, too actiony versus strategic. The problem is that the strategy involved is stun then kill.
And it just
doesn't matter if you're doing that.
It doesn't
CRPG
help that it
style
has
or action.
The most BioWare story. It doesn't also help the fact that all the characters are fucking boring. It doesn't help that the morality system is dumb and super asinine. And it doesn't help that there's only 2 major levels in this game where your choices actually have an impact. Or there are side quests.
All the side quests feel really the same. It doesn't help that there's a bunch of different combat system styles that functionally are the same and also take a bunch of time and energy to upgrade. There's a lot of just poor decisions. Yes. And it's unfortunate because I see this, just like with Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, I see the skeletons of other games, other better games in this game's closet.
We're going to be referencing Sonic until we die, aren't we?
Yeah.
We are.
Like the only way we can actually defeat that game is by never speaking of it again.
We're going to be on our deathbeds. We'll be like, this
definitely... Hey guys, do you remember back when we played Sonic Chronicles: the Dark... What?
At least it'll unite us forever.
Like I said, I think you've played the worst game BioWare's ever made in the form of Sonic the Brotherhood, but I would say that for me personally...
Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood?
God damn you people.
This sushi restaurant, this all-you-can-eat sushi restaurant is the Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood of sushi restaurants. Like, I can see that there was a skilled craftsman behind this sushi, but they just didn't have the materials.
When they started using taco meat... they lost me with the vision.
There was an interesting twist in the third course. I'm not really sure what happened.
Oh, Jesus Christ. But no, I mean, the nicest thing you can say about Jade Empire is they learned from their mistakes in Jade Empire.
It's not Sonic.
And then they made Mass Effect, which perfected a lot of the problems here, or at least honed them.
A lot better.
Like, yeah, the idea of boiling down the combat to 3 levelable traits... That's really cool in Mass Effect. It makes it almost as if it's easier and more open-ended and apt for creative solutions to combat situations.
Yeah, I will say this game at least clarified my vision for what the role of status effects in games should be. It should be an alternate solution that adds some depth to your combat system beyond straight damage, and you cannot have it be universally applicable. Otherwise, it is a crutch that players will lean on.
You know what? Game did actually a really great job at using status effects and making them, a viable option, but not required, and also not instantly crippling all the, bosses that you fight.
Whatever the opposite of Charles Barkley is.
I swear to God, if you say Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, I'm gonna.
Volda's Story, Abyssal City, actually.
Well, at the end of the day...
you know what? The only critique is that they didn't really tell you what Reckoning did, but...
What happens when you inflict Reckoning?
Wait, are you talking about Game of the Year, Volda Story?
Yeah, I was talking about Game of the Year 2015 Volda Story. That one is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That game actually had a really solid path for...
Yeah, it actually did.
For inflicting status effects, and you know what the whole secret was? Just sort of make it all do similar damage. It just sort of scaled, like very, very balanced across all the status effects, but they just had different flavor, different combat flavor, and it was awesome because everything was viable, and it was just fun.
I like the Final Fantasy V method.
All
the status effects are devastating and super powerful, but you have to be smart to use them.
I like Final Fantasy status effects too because they are game altering. You are correct. I actually remember
5 specific.
Back when I probably put like hundreds of hours into Final Fantasy Tactics Advance.
5 does have old, which is a really messed up status effect. You slowly age until you become level 1. You become level 1 and stop being able to do damage. Basically Benjamin Button.
In Final Fantasy Tactics, you get Frog, which is pretty easy to cast. It has like a 20% success rate to just turn almost any enemy into a frog that moves 1 square, deals 1 damage, and just gets insta-killed by anything.
Final Fantasy V has Frog.
Yeah, baby.
And so, I think that's the end of this episode,
since
we're clearly not talking about Jade Empire.
Well, is there any other overarching things about Jade Empire? I got through all my spiel about how the combat's not as garbage as you say it is, and how I wish the morality system / karma system gave me anything compelling for the other side of the coin.
I don't have anything else to say.
No.
It gave BioWare the confidence to invest in their own intellectual properties rather than make games based off of pre-existing properties.
And
Dragon Age, Mass Effect, and almost all of the games after Jade Empire were original properties.
Yeah, and that's maybe one of the biggest takeaways here is for all of the criticism we have levied against Jade Empire, it is great to see to be on the other side of this game and know that this developer took all of these lessons and learned them, and in many ways, even though they were one of the premier RPG developers at the time, they are several orders of magnitude even more revered and skilled now. And it's great to see that, some of the critiques we levied about things like racial representation and stereotyping, some of the things we mentioned about the combat system being balanced, the side quest design, they have learned all of these lessons. So the criticisms we're saying,
they're trailblazers now, especially in inclusion and diversity.
Yeah, so it's good that we had these critiques. It seems like they saw them too.
Yeah.
And went on and rectified those problems.
But real quick,
so
all you motherfuckers out there, and I know you're there, that are thinking, man, BioWare should make Jade Empire 2. Stop.
No, they shouldn't.
Stop.
No, they shouldn't. No.
Those people exist.
Demons.
Don't.
They exist and they shouldn't. So, thank you, ZP, for guiding us through this. Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Pete. Pete, it is your turn again to pick for our next
Yes,
episode.
it is. So I figured.
What do you pick?
I figured after these games, we could use a little whimsy in our lives. So I've selected a game that, like Amy Adams and all her rom-coms, has stolen my heart.
Oh.
So we are going to
I'm with you there, buddy.
Yeah, right? It's great. I was just watching Enchanted last weekend.
I was just watching Fighter,
Another good one. Not exactly
The other rom-com.
Not exactly a rom-com.
The other Amy Adams rom-com.
So I've chosen slightly lesser known game, Wuppo. WUPPO. For any of our listeners looking it up, find it on Steam.
UPPO.
There's only one U, isn't there?
Well, there's the W and then there's another U. So it's like
Look at you. Yeah, it's just confusing. WUPPO, Wuppo. That would be our next game for the podcast.
I started playing Wuppo, and it is a weird game.
Yeah, I know. But whimsical.
It is whimsical. And if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so at deeplistenspod, deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com, or deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have comment sections. We did get an email. Thank you, Sidol, I believe is how you pronounce this person's name. He sent an email, but it was not a question. It was more, I didn't realize that the Ifa tree in Final Fantasy IX is pronounced Ifa and not Lifa. That's a capital I and not a lowercase l. Which, yes,
yeah.
that screwed me up. I used to pronounce it the Lifa tree, and it turns out it's the Ifa tree.
Yeah. I'm glad we could provide a service to our listening community.
Yes, so if you want to get in touch with the show, even those little things, it tickled
We
my
appreciate
heart to know we're helping people with pronunciations at the very least. So thank you once again, Pete.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Billy.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Tune in next week or next time for the Wuppo. I can hopefully leave this weird pillow fort of sound muffling.
And thank you, ZP. Hope we will have to have you on again. And it sounds like from our Steam conversations, you might be getting the Final Fantasy itch again.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, As this podcast was recording, Final Fantasy X 10-10-2 HD Remix Electro Boogaloo Edition just finished downloading.
Outstanding.
You know, we could just roll back and play Dirge of Cerberus. Real good.
You shut your goddamn mouth.
And that's
Probably
and
a
that's the end
hard
of
Kerberos.
that's the end of the show. Peace.